Father, we thank you again. We bless your holy name for your goodness and mercy. We thank you, Father, for this day. Thank you for this hour and this opportunity. Bless your name, not because your name worthy to be blessed. Father, we do ask your presence as we try to do the thing which is right for our citizens. We thank you again. Father, we ask you to bless this country. You know our needs, you know our wants. Father, you know what you have designed for us, and let us be able to receive and accept those things we cannot change. Father, give us the wisdom to know the difference between right and wrong. We thank you now. We bless you. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to welcome everyone to our meeting, our 2024-2025 budget workshop. It's Monday, July 22nd, 2024. We have a conference line set up. The number there is 1917-900-1022, access code 32347#. This is not a toll-free number, and you may be subject to long-distance charges according to your long-distance plan. When the chairperson opens the meeting for public comment, please follow the below instructions. If you wish to speak, please dial *5. The moderator will unmute your line when it's your turn to speak and notify you by announcing the last 4 digits of your telephone number. Please announce your name and address. You will be allowed to speak for 3 minutes. Any person wishing to address the board regarding an agenda item will be giving 3 minutes for comment. A commenter may only speak 1 time for each agenda item. This is a workshop, so there's no approval of the agenda. We will move on to item 4. The board to hold budget workshops to discuss all aspects of fiscal year 2024-2025 budget priorities. Where do we want to start?
That's up to y'all. We have provided some information about SIG annual leave payout policy comparison, and we included all the constitutional officers and also the state of Florida, so we could compare each agency, which is what you said we would do on Thursday. We also updated the capital improvement request to prioritize high, medium, low, and within those sections, numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, etc.
Okay.
And then also, we provided some information about the small county surtax, which includes just a definition of the use of funds, just so we're all on the same page, and a couple of different options for capital improvement expenditures and operational expenditure options. And then county finance provided the estimated revenue and what it would look like with the different potential allocations.
Okay. Which one do we want to start? We want to start on the,
And then, I'm sorry, Danielle has information about minimum wage as well, and the impact for getting to the $50 an hour.
you want to go over that first? I'm good to go over that.
Okay, so I don't have an actual amount, but just to let the board know, currently everyone is, at $13 an hour, which, the mandate for the $13 an hour is to be there by September of 2024. So everybody is already there because of the board doing the $2 this year. So we don't have to, get anywhere until September 2025.
Okay.
So I know that it was mentioned Thursday about bumping either to 14 or 15. So right now there's 8 full-time employees between, that's making 13 to 14. you have 46 part-time between 13 and 14, and then including that, to get to 15, you would have 18 full-time, and then 48.
Say that again, Mel?
You would have,
Repeat it
start
up.
from the beginning, repeat it all, okay.
It is
So
what?
you have 8 full-time that is currently making between 13 and 14. And 46 part-time, that's between 13 and 14.
46.
So in other words, they may not need the full dollar.
Correct.
Okay.
So Danielle, if you took this, 54 people, I think that's what it is. If you took the 54 people and you raised them to $15 an hour, what would that cost?
I would have to calculate, because it's not just them. You would have to do, because you also have another batch, so you also have 18 that make between 14 and 15.
Full-time?
Yes, that includes that 8, so you have an additional 10 that make between 14 and 15. And then you have an additional 2 that make between 14 and 15 part-time.
But the 18 includes the original 8 you mentioned.
Yes, so that you have an additional 10 that make between 14 and 15.
So we have 18 full-time that need to move to the.
That would go between 13 and 15, yes. So you have some that's potentially giving them $2
And then 48
part-time,
part-time that are between 14 and 15.
that are between 13 and 15.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
So if I can ask a question, would all this fractionalization then lead to a mandate next year of moving another
You
group
would,
of-
if you did that, you wouldn't have to move anybody. Like if what you're saying is moving everybody to 15, then you've met the mandate.
Right, and so the way this budget's proposed, it includes that increase for everyone across the board?
The way the budget is currently prepared, it gives everybody $1, and so it moves everybody, would be moved to 14.
And that still would be, short of what the voters' mandate is.
Yes, and you have until 2026 to get
That's
them to
it.
that.
So for right now, on these that you just gave us, what's the cost of that to bring these
I'll
people?
calculate that while y'all talk about it. And that's, I'll work on calculating. It's gonna take-
And given, those wages, does that make us somewhat competitive with our other counties? We're still having struggles with getting folks to apply for our positions. I know we've spoken that about firefighters and all of our personnel, and I felt like that we were trying to implement this process so that we were more competitive with other counties, so that folks weren't driving from Taylor County to Madison County to work for their firefighter agencies.
So as far as the firefighters, I believe when we gave the $2 an hour raise last year, that moved all of them up to the 15, which made us more competitive.
Right. But other counties are still ahead of us in that schedule,
I
correct?
believe so. I can't recall off the top of my head, I'm sorry. I know that, the one county that I can think of that is in close proximity is Madison County, and I believe they moved everyone to 15, maybe year before last. I can't recall exactly. But there were some counties that or some entities, when the mandate came out, they moved everyone to 15. And as you know, this isn't a county, but the local school district, the governor, imposed a regulation to move everybody to 15, I believe last year or year before last. Does that sound familiar, Gary? Was that year before last, maybe?
If you recall too, Commissioner Newman, the city firefighters, their salary is significantly more than ours for firefighters.
Yes, ma'am. Well, I think that's across the board in a number of the departments. That's why if we're looking at the increases as proposed in the budget, which is doable, my support would be to fund the increase so that we are moving along in the schedule with the mandate And we're trying to continue to remain competitive so that we can have quality employees. And I believe that's a good thing. So that's what I'm trying to say, is I do recall the struggles that we've had in respect of filling positions and looking at the shortfalls and understanding what the competitive schedule is. So for me, to understand and see what we've got here in this proposal, that this is included in these proposed budget numbers. I would be in support of funding this budget so that we can continue to keep our folks moving along in this place. I think that's a good position to have.
What we discussed last week, and I totally understand what you're saying, okay? But what we discussed last week when you were not here is, you know, we've got a mandate that we have to do something. And of course, that's to meet that new minimum wage of $15. So I think that most of us agree that, you know we have to do that. And then we gotta look at the recurring cost for next year. We don't know where we're gonna be, but it's probably gonna be a lot worse than it is this year financially, our revenue. So
Right,
just
well,
taking
and
that into consideration, but I totally get it, I get it.
Well, I think if we look at the big picture as far as, we've got our proposals here, with this budget. We understand, the issues that we've had with staff in the past, and we are all familiar with the voters' mandated increase. So, it seems to me like the best path going forward is to obviously handle the issue with the mandate. That's not a choice, we've got to be on those schedules. And that we also have this issue of providing services and having our firefighters and law enforcement and all these folks. And, you know, my position is that we see what the budget is, we see what these proposals are, and I'm in support of this proposed budget. That's where I'm at.
Where are we having problems specifically of not being able to hire people because of the salary? Can you tell me where we're having that problem? That you've had people that said, I can't do that because the pay is not adequate?
I think the department,
I know we had the cleaning person over at the courthouse. I was in on some of those interviews. It was.
So that's one. And so where else have we had a problem where we could not hire people because of the wage?
the department that kind of jumps to mind is animal control, where we struggle to hire folks.
Because of the salary?
That's what I've been told, and we don't, I mean, it's not just because of the salary. It's that department, a lot of it's the
Right.
job.
Busy
I mean,
environment.
Right, but
of the work.
specifically, I'm looking at where the wages by themselves, it turns people away.
I don't know, because those people don't typically apply. So what we're not capturing is people that may apply, I don't know. I don't know how
Do
to.
you know, Commissioner Newman, you said that there's a bunch of them, do you know?
Sure, I mean, well, folks that I talk to, it's not just in the sense of starting with the county, but the case of retention. And so we see, and we've discussed those things in respect to firefighters, in respect to law enforcement, in respect to a number of our departments, whether it's folks inside the courthouse, where there are more competitive rates, and that's where folks go. And given the economy, how can you hold that against somebody that can take the same drive and they're making more money?
Yeah, and
So it's
what I'm
not,
getting,
I'm not trying to create something that's outside of the reach. I'm just trying to understand here, knowing the difficulties that we've had with our salaries, and really the struggles, because folks can drive to a neighboring county and maybe doing the exact same job, and they're making considerably more.
And I heard this week, that there, occasionally we'll lose folks to the state, out of the public works department, just as an example. And I know we have one person out of the public works department that's going to the state, and I've heard there may be a second. So that's just a snapshot. I think it depends on on the particular department and what the demands are within that
Okay,
department.
well, what if we looked at those departments where we fall short, like the firefighters and maybe the road department? And I'm not for across the board raises for everybody. I can't get there, considering what we're gonna be looking at in the future. And you know, if we're successful to attract industry and everything, and our situation improves, give everybody every time that we can, but I'm just real worried about the recurring expenses. I do have a soft spot for the people that are making, you know, like some in the road department, the firefighters. I would like to help them out. I'm okay with trying to help them, but across the board, every office worker and everything, I can't get there this year, looking at where we're gonna be. And I'm not worried about compression, I know that's always something that comes up. But as I've talked to other people and other people in industries, they just don't do that. As a matter of fact, they use merit performance raises. And it was brought out last time by someone in the audience that, you know, you give everybody the same, but you've got, and we've got great workers, I know, but I know we've got some people that are not great. That's in every organization. And it just seems, you know, if you've got somebody that they lay out and take their sick leave when they're, or whatever, or they don't, when they're on the job and they just don't perform, but yet everybody gets that same amount. But the main thing for me are the recurring costs.
I'd like to say something about that. In the past, I worked for a lot of different companies, and years ago, a company tried to give part of the group, one part, a raise, and not give the other part a raise. And that caused a mess, and that taught us something to learn, that if you're gonna give a raise in a company, and this is a business in a company, you might as well call it, this is a business. And you just cannot give part of the money and not the other part, so if you talk about dragging their feet, they'll show you something.
That's the
Then you
thing,
fire 'em.
understanding, you know, the mandates that we have, we don't have a choice about those things, but for the other employees, like we've discussed all these things in the past.
Right.
We understand and know what that does inside the organization as to the culture that it creates or that it morphs into. So I don't disagree. That's why I'm in support of that, understanding what we see with these costs. We can work through this issue and continue to work through the voter mandate with salaries and continue to improve inside this organization as to the culture that we're trying to create, or in some cases not create. When we have those folks that are gonna be neglected in that, if you fractionalize the increase, then it's going to lead to more hardships and troubles, and you may have more positions that you have to fill.
You will.
And you've seen those things, we talked about that.
Yeah, I done been there and seen that, I understand that. If you gonna give money, or it's better not to give anything, or give everybody the same amount. That's me now, that's just, again.
That's why I'm in support of that.
Now, I tell you what, you know, we talk about dollar dollar raise, but hey, you can't go percent, well, give everybody 50-cent raise. Now, I worked with many companies that worked for a long time. I've had differential pays and different people doing the same thing, getting different amount of money. That's sort of like the sawmill days, you know. Sawmill days, you go out there and everybody gotta pull the bulls off the chain. One getting $1.50, one getting 75 cents, and one getting $1. You know, there's nothing you can do about it. But I think we as a board, if you're gonna give everybody a raise, it don't have to be $1. We gave $2 last year. If I understand that, that's about $80 a week. That was pretty nice. But with things being like it is, hey, break it down to 50%. So you give everybody a $20 a week raise. You know, it said that you're doing something.
So you're referring to moving everyone up to, and just giving them $1.
Opposed,
Yes, it's $1. Giving them $1, and then everyone across the board.
yes, sir.
So in what, so what, if we did not worry with, do anything with the compression side of it, I mean, how close is that gonna bring the gap? How close would that bring the gap from?
For the minimum wage,
Well, no, I mean, if we bumped the dollar, then we didn't, to just the ones below the minimum wage requirement. We bumped the dollar, didn't, just on those employees and not everyone. I mean, what's the gap there? What would be the gap?
so I've tried to, just so I would have the numbers handy. So I think just so as an example, like with concessions. So what you would have is the concession workers, their and this is back to 2014, and maybe, their salary would have almost doubled. And, no, that's a bad example. Okay, so if you just look at the minimum wage mandate, what you have in several departments is that the person who is the lead or the supervisor is making the same as someone who is hired in, which could, it could make it difficult for them to take on the added responsibilities and if they feel like they're not being compensated for it. And these are part-time positions. That's a limited number of people. But, I think in several departments, you may see that gap being very, very close. Animal control is one of them, where the coordinator would not be making much more than the officers.
So, in what Commissioner Dempsey mentioned, they're not given 50 cents or new versus $1 or whatever. Would there be anything against increasing the one below minimum to minimum this year? And then following year, maybe let's look at the ones, I don't know what the difference is and how many over the 15 or 15 over. Maybe look at those next year and then kind of deal with the compression the following year.
That's good in math. And I'm not gonna argue this is not article for me. I'll go along with whatever the board decides. But I'd like to see those people brought to minimum wage, up to the $15 minimum wage. But if we sit here and we say, okay, let's do that, and then next year, we'll bring the other people up. What if we can't next year? But that's the same principle as if we're going in and raise them all this year. What are we gonna do next year? And my fear is just this, and this is all I'm gonna say about it. We may get into a situation where we're gonna start laying people off. As you look at the potential with our revenue, that day could come where we lay people off. I don't wanna see that happen. So whatever the board wants, that's what I'm gonna do.
So what I've passed out is a draft, and it is including the dollar, because I didn't want to underrepresent. That just shows.
Can't read that.
I'm sorry. It just shows the current minimum, midpoint, and maximum. So in order just to represent our old pay plan versus what our today's numbers would be, it just gives you an idea of the different jobs within the pay grade and what their hourly salary is. And that's giving everybody $1, just to try to give y'all an idea of what numbers we're looking at. And of course, something that we do need to take into consideration is our full-time people have very rich benefits, and I don't want to overlook that. or, you know, give that, the credit it deserves. Our full-time folks have, I think, 11 or 13 paid holidays. They have vacation time, they have sick time, they have very, very good insurance. So that, you know, we can't overlook that as a benefit when we're talking about full-time positions.
But there's also, you know, adjustment to that insurance in this proposed budget, is that true?
Yes. So.
And that was an effort to lower those costs for that
Yes, and I think we
insurance, right?
captured, I think the savings were about $177,000, I believe.
Right.
So what the insurance committee recommended was changing the deductible from 500 to 1,000, the out-of-pocket max from 4,000 to 5,000. For individual, family was 8 to,
It was 2,000 for the deductible for family and I think.
for the out-of-pocket
Eight.
max. I apologize, I can't remember off the top of my head.
I got it right.
But the adjustment for the deductibles, was quite a savings as far as the cost for the premium.
It was, and the out-of-pocket max as well, and doesn't impact as many people.
Right, but-
Because everyone in the insurance plan is not going to have a need to pay that deductible. So that is, you know, minimal impact, the same, I mean, it's maximum impact for the people who are affected. But as far as the members affected, it's a low impact, and the same for the out-of-pocket max. You have to have, you know, surgery or, you know, an illness to reach those numbers. And then we also recommended that as far as the dependent contribution, that everyone, pay 20%. And the board pay 80, the members pay, or the employees pay 20%, and that is still extremely rich. That's a very, very rich benefit.
Mr. Chair. So, LaWanda, you and Gary, you know this budget. You know more about this budget than any of us up here. I'll admit that. And so, y'all know what the future looks like. So, your recommendation is important because you know more about the budget. And you know what's gonna probably happen next year and the year after. So I'm kinda looking to you two for guidance. I mean, I can sit here and say, yeah, I want everybody to have a raise, and I do. And I do. But looking strictly at the financial part, I'm looking for you two, because you know where we're at, you know where we're going. So I'm looking for y'all's recommendation in terms of the budget for this year, next year, and the year after that. What can we do and stay safe and not put ourselves in a position where we're gonna have to lay people off?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that anybody, you know, really has that crystal ball. I mean, I think we do have to prepare for a big impact next year. I think it's coming, in my opinion, I think it's coming. But, you know, I mean, that's the challenges that we have, is that, you know, we need to provide services, we need to take care of our employees, we need to take care of our citizens, and we gotta do it with the amount of money we gotta do it with. So, I
That's
mean,
right.
that's just a challenge we have. I don't, you know, I mean, that's just the balance that there is.
To stay safe. What is your best recommendation, LaWanda and Gary? 'Cause
I think
what is your
something.
best recommendation that we're not gonna?
We talked about this in insurance committee. I think that, you know, if you talk to our folks who are the lowest paid folks in the organization, and you talk to them about their health insurance, they'll probably all say, it's nice, but it doesn't pay the bills. So what we may want, and I don't think we'll have a choice, I think next year, you know, certainly we're going to have to look at our health insurance benefits. And as much as I hate to say it, because I think we have to keep our workers healthy if we want them to come to work. And I know that our demographics, we have some, you know, just typically I think, rural government has maybe older folks who need to go to the doctor, they need medical care. I don't want people to put off medical care until they have something catastrophic, because that will have an adverse effect to our rates. But I think if people really had to choose, they'd probably choose a higher salary over health insurance benefits. I don't know what, Gary, what your thoughts are. I mean, there will be people who would be unhappy, but rich health insurance does not pay the bills. So, and I do agree that the board has been very, very generous the last few years. I certainly appreciate that. And if you wanted to meet in the middle, which I think, if I'm figuring it right in my head, which is kind of dangerous, but if everyone got 50 cents an hour, if that's something you want to consider, that would just about cover their, or it would contribute to their out-of-pocket, their increased out-of-pocket if, you know, if you agree to take the insurance committee's recommendation on reducing the benefits fund sum in the health insurance plan. But I certainly think that next year we'll have to make a drastic, I hate it, but I think we'll have to make a drastic change to our health insurance benefits in order to stay afloat.
But I fear that we would have to start laying people off. I don't want to be there.
We'll have to make a drastic change a lot, but I mean, I know, like Commissioner Newman said, that, I mean, obviously the money is there in the budget to make the increases in this year, but that don't mean you have to give back the increase just because the money's there.
I understand.
But if do the increase, then we're gonna run into next year, like Commissioner Fegel says, is we have to start redlining stuff and like law. I mean, that's the last thing any of us wanna do.
We may have to do that anyway.
I mean, I feel that, I don't know that could be a part of it anyway, and I just don't know what it's gonna look like, so.
You know, in a perfect world, we'd give everybody $2 or $3, everybody, but we're not in a perfect world right now.
So I just be clear about the issue of the funding. You know, the issue of the funding is not because the money's there. The issue of the funding is because of the needs and what's had to have been worked through in the past with retainment and what the voters have mandated with minimum wage. I know there's a number of elements that are going on inside of that formula. It's really past the point of what a preferred position is and what are the necessities, what are gonna help us retain employees, what are gonna deal with the insurance costs, and what can't be avoided. We can't avoid what's been mandated by the voters. So that's what's pushing me to this place in respect to what do you consider? If that's the greatest affordability within inside of this budget for 50 cents an hour for the employees, I do agree with Commissioner Demps, that is an increase. And so maybe that is the best position, but just to be totally transparent, it's past the point of what a personal preference or desire is into this is what's mandated by the voters in the state of Florida. This is what we've been dealing with as a board the whole time I've been on this board, as far as competitive rates and wages and employees that we continue to have greater and greater expectations. And let's not forget about what those employees continue to work through, whether it be the pandemic to the hurricane to response to cleanup and all the rest. So that's what has driven my focus on this issue. It's not just, hey, the money's here, let's go on spending spree. Not at all. Not in any consideration. But that understanding in total what we've had to navigate through. We've been blessed to be able to give the increase we did last year. If that's the lesser amount this year, it's still an effort to address and deal with all these elements in total. And I do agree continually with what Commissioner Moody says in respect to create more friction inside the organization. don't think that's healthy.
We don't need a spreadsheet. If we can't give them 50 cents, I'm fine with that too. I want, I want to give them something. But, whatever we do, we need to be across the board with everybody. I mean, that's just past experience. I've been, that's the thing you want to do with people. Because word of mouth gets around in about 5 minutes. Right.
So if we did 50 cents, is that gonna put, that's not gonna put everyone above 14, because I mean, at the end of the day, we got next year's the last budget session to get the minimum wage to where, if we only do 50.
We have until September 26th to
Do
get everybody
50%.
to 50.
Then those that are below 4, just over 13, still gonna probably have them under 14, and you're gonna have to go that much more the following year.
On the same
So,
list.
well, I'm just saying, in that respect, next year, we may have to give some $1.25, so what y'all are saying, across the board, we gotta give everybody $1.25. I mean,
We may not be able to do that.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, that's what we're being told,
That's right.
but I just,
Let me say this.
To make the 15, you say it.
well, I mean, if we've got somebody that's at $13.25, you give them 50 cents, you gonna have them at $13.75, and what y'all are saying,
That's true. You're right.
across the board, next year, you wanna give everybody $1.25, because that's the right thing to do.
That's true. And that year is the year we won't be able to afford it, just like we can now.
And next year's worse than this year.
You don't understand business.
And I mean, the strategy that you chose was to get to $1 an hour, but you also didn't know that we were gonna lose the revenue that we were gonna lose, and we made that decision.
Correct.
So, it was a good strategy that you chose, but,
The dynamics have changed.
And y'all don't have to do anything, I'm sorry, I'm so
Go ahead.
sorry,
Go ahead.
you don't have to do anything until next year.
Well, I don't say we need to wait and not do anything at this moment, I mean, because I don't think we need to be trying to go find close to $2 for every employee next year's budget at all.
What we're doing is, we're trying to balance, this is a business, okay? First and foremost, this is a business. Then our emotional side says, well, they go out and they work in hurricanes and they do this and do that, and yes, that's part of their job, whatever. If they have a day where they have to go out and work a hurricane, or they have a day it's raining and they sit there and do something else, you know what I'm saying? And it's all important, but we gotta still keep in mind the business part of it. Where are we gonna be? You hear Gary saying revenue's gonna be lower next year. So whatever we do this year, we either may have to take it back or lay people off. That's kind of where we're at, between the rock and the hard place. All the emotional stuff touches my heart too. But then the business side of it, that's our responsibility, is to look at the business side. People are always gonna get mad, no matter what you do. And if you got employees that they don't get as much as the next, and they decide they're not gonna work, a good department head will fire them, because there's other people waiting for that good job with good insurance. Shouldn't be tolerated. Well, I've got an attitude, I didn't get as much as that person, so I'm not gonna do my job. Get rid of them.
Now, there is a segment out there in the community that says don't give them nothing, everybody's getting too much. I don't go along with that.
Me either.
But I do go along with this, if you go give one a raise, and I'm telling you, I've been in a situation where some get $1, some get 50 cents, some get nothing. The employee that you give $1, he might not be the best employee, but he might be the favorite employee of somebody working for him. I've seen that too. We all got to understand, if you do it the same thing for everybody, that shows no favoritism. And if you do something for different ones, even though some might think he's more important or she is more important, But that is the perception of the eyes that looking at it. But if you give them all 50%, that's 1,000 all the year. You can't say that you wasn't thinking about them as a whole. But go give them this one $1, that one 75 cents, and that one $1.50, and you can see what happens. It makes a difference. Every time he goes to the store, he gonna pay the same price you pay for that loaf of bread. But if you give him all 1,000 all the year, you do whichever way he needs to, what he needs to do with it. And you can't say that that was a favoritism play. That's a level play.
I would say I'm not in that world that, in my world, I'm not in that world that everyone gets the same raise across the board.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I mean, we couldn't, everybody in our office don't make the same money.
Yeah, exactly.
But, go ahead, Jim.
I can understand what Commissioner Dents is saying, but you also got to look at the other side. When the guy that gets the raise that's doing all the work, and he's carrying the guy that he's working with because they're dragging butt, and they're not showing up all the time, or showing up late, it gives him the opposite feeling of how that works. Well, I'm getting the same amount he is, but I'm doing the extra work and I'm going the extra mile. Why should I do that? Because this guy ain't half of what I am at this work, and he's getting the same amount I am. This is gonna be something this county's got to face all the time because of the way y'all doing your pay system. I know you, just like you just said, everybody at your office makes different money. You know why? Because you got different jobs, and some perform different than others. Where you used to work, Mr. Moody, y'all had to go in you had to do your levels. If you couldn't pass that level, you didn't get a raise. Y'all all made different money at different times. You hired in, you had to work your way up. Just about everybody up here, except the people that's always worked for this county, if you work for somebody else, you get paid for how you perform and what you did and how you showed up. And that, if y'all don't do something about it, this is something y'all gonna fight all the time. Next year's gonna be the same thing. Well, we gotta get $15 an hour, just like you said. Well, now we gotta raise everybody to $1.25. 3 years from now, it goes up to $20 an hour. I mean, where are you gonna be? Now you gotta try to step people up. If you start doing in-house, make your department heads do evaluations. If they got to, bring the evaluations to y'all, to LaWanda, to somebody. They gotta prove that they're there, that they're working, their attendance is right. Give them raises and separate them out. Weed out the bad, then you have good people working. And if they get mad because they didn't get a raise, well, you know what? You need to perform better. You need to start showing up. You need to quit using your sick leave when you're not sick. If you're sick, that's fine. But come to work and work while you're here. If you leaned up on that shovel when you should be digging, and the guy's digging and doing both parts, that guy needs a raise. You need to be fired.
Well,
You need to go somewhere else, McDonald's.
Respectfully, part of the issues we've been working through is folks aren't applying for jobs. We have openings we can't fill. So your logic doesn't necessarily meet the balance. Because when you don't have applicants, you can't fill positions.
Yeah, but
We've had to work
you're
for
wasting
those
money
issues.
if you're filling positions with nobody
We're
that's
not-
standing
We're
there.
not seeking to waste money at all. We have to provide a service, and given the mandate by the voters in this state, we have to do it at a certain level, and that's what we're trying to work to.
Well,
So
exactly.
there's a combination, it's not just because of emotions or because of preference, but it's because of the mandates and the services that have to be provided, and that's what we're working to try.
Well, I can tell you
So
this.
there's different rates. and
I would
ways to
rather
do
be
it.
short-handed
Well, that's
and
your
my
preference.
guys double up
That's true, but you're
than
not, you're
have
not
a guy
working in
stand
county
there
government.
on my job and not do nothing. He's not gonna
You're
do
working
it
in the private sector.
because my guys are gonna run
And
him
we
off.
have to provide these services. We can't say to the sheriff's office, don't fill the positions, we don't have to provide the service. We have to provide those, and that's what we're gonna do.
Exactly. But when you start weeding out the bad and bringing in better
You
people
can
that's
weed them
gonna
out,
work.
and the ways that you weed them out.
And
is
once
that
you bring up
have
the pay,
dedicated employees, and that's
If
what
you
we're trying
bring
to
up the
attain.
pay of your department heads a little bit when they see the people, and you got a guy making $13 an hour, and this guy right here is working good, and he's making $14.50 because he performs better,
Sure.
then they're gonna see, hey, if I work better, I'm gonna get a little bit more money.
But we talk different
This across the
standards.
board stuff's gonna break the county doing that every time.
Right, so there's a way that we can do that, and some of that's mandated. It's not a choice.
Well, I
It's
know
mandated
that.
by the voters, not by this board, not by the sheriff's office, not by the clerk of the court. It's what the voters said we're gonna do.
So,
But it's not mandated to raise everybody the same, it's
It's
mandated
not,
to do
but-
the 15.
The reality is, we're talking about trying to have a culture inside our organization to retain good workers. And when we send messages of fractionalized wages and rates, then we're saying two different things. We say in word, we want to keep good employees, and then we say in deed, but we're gonna do it at a depressed rate. And I think we can see the results of what that is. We have openings that we can't fill, that's part of the problem. So we are trying to have quality employees that we can retain, but we have to compete with all the surrounding counties. And when those folks are at different places and where Taylor County's at, we've seen them work through the issues and the problems that's been created. And these things haven't just started, they've been going on here for a decade, because those rates have been different for a decade. But we're not in those same places any longer, we're in a place where we can compete. So in the issue of folks that are not the most motivated employees, we can deal with those issues, we have mechanisms that we can work through to get to that point. But at this place, this is the budget session, and we need to focus on these numbers that are within reach to put forth the greatest effort so that we can go forward and retain the greatest employees that we can. And that's the period.
You know, I want to say this, and I think you're gonna have disgruntled employees, you're gonna have employees with bad attitudes, no matter what. If you give everybody the same amount, then you've got the guy saying, okay, he's not doing as much as me, and he doesn't show up. I do all the work, but yet he gets the same pay. They're disgruntled. And then, no matter what you do, they're gonna be disgruntled. Either way, give everybody the same, they're gonna be mad. But if you go to that, performance, hey, if you don't do the job, then be mad, leave, we'll help you leave.
If you're gonna do anything, you need to raise the ones up and get them towards the minimum wage, because if you don't, you're gonna battle this all the time. Then worry about the compression level later. You can kind of pick them up a little bit later if you need to.
so, you know,
Have to save a lot of money.
if you give 50 cents, you set yourself up, potentially have to give $1.25, or I don't know what the number would be, but over $1 next year. So, like the clerk said, we made a plan, had $1 an hour, you know, was a good plan. I think for this year, we probably should, for the employees under 15, we should stay the course, probably at the $1 an hour. And next year, you know, we could potentially not have to go quite $1 an hour, you know, because that's probably gonna take everyone above 14 at least. And if we wanna look at the employees that's over 15 and maybe give them 50 cents this year, $1 for these guys, we're trying to, we've gotta reach a number based on the voters. And if we wanna give the ones over 15, 50 cents to help with the compression, then by all means, but next year, when we look at this budget, it might not really be $1 for these guys. It may be, hey, we're trying, sorry, but the voters said we gotta hit this number by 2026, so, you know, it may be 50 cents for this one, so, you know, are we, go ahead?
So what you're saying, let me make sure I understand. So what you're saying is that for everyone under 15,
$1.
give them $1. And
At
then
the will of the
anyone over
board,
15, give them 50 cents?
that's what that's, I'm one board
Because we
member.
have to get to 14 next year,
You
right?
have to be at 14 by September 2025.
So,
You're gonna be there, you'll be there at the $1 an hour this year.
right, we're already there. That was why I was asking. So but you're saying So we have people now at 13. So you're saying give them $1 to
Right.
get them to 14 now. And we'll be a year ahead of schedule if we do that.
I mean, I would rather get closer to.
That's fine. And then anyone over the 14, give them the 50 cents, or the 15?
Over 50.
Over 15. Okay.
Anybody
Now-
under 15 gets $1, anybody over 15 gets 50 cents.
I'm one more member.
Okay.
Yeah,
I just wanna make sure.
but if you've got somebody making $14 and, 40 cent or 50 cent, and you give them $1, they're over 15. You see what I'm saying? Does everybody make exactly 13 or exactly 14? You've got somewhere in between there, so if you give $1, on some cases, you're gonna be beyond 15.
Well,
So it needs to be whatever it takes
that's the,
to get you to $15. Maybe this person, if you wanna divide it up between 2 years, maybe if you give 50 cents this year or $1 next year, you're gonna have to look at each one so that you don't go over 15. You see what I'm saying?
I do see what you're saying, but you're into, you're putting people at the same level at that point. Okay, I mean, I understand we're trying to reach a number, but then we do have a job that, and you get back into, hey, I'm making the same money with this one, like, I've been here X amount of time, so I just said, hey, $1, even if they were the 14, 20, 25, $1, and that's at the will of the board, anyone over 15, 50 cent. And then next year,
Are you saying you wanna get them to, you wanna just try to get everyone as close to 15 as possible?
no, I'm just saying $1. I'm just saying $1 for everybody under 14. That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
I didn't.
Anyone under 14, not 15.
I mean, that was our plan, was $1 up till, to get,
Right.
you know, everyone till we got to that threshold, that minimum wage. And I understand what Commissioner Field's saying, for sure, I do understand what she's saying, but that's, you go to picking them apart and trying to give this one, hey, this one 75 cent will get you to 15, give this one 50 cent, gets you to 15, then you get a bunch of people at the same level, and then you could create some friction in there.
So anyone under 15, $1. Anyone who's currently making over 15, 50 cents
That's up to the
across the
board.
board.
That's 50 cents is at the will of the board. I mean, I'm saying,
Okay.
we got 5 board members.
I just don't know, if you're making over $14 but not 15, and you get $1, that's gonna throw you over what we have to do. It is not, please understand, y'all, it's not that I don't want these employees to have a good wage and give them all we can. I'm strictly looking at the business side. I'm trying to take the emotions out of my decision and look at the business side. We're charged with a lot of, we're charged with keeping this county going.
You're right. What we are charged with keeping this county going, we're supposed to look at each one as an individual. I said before, 50% we give everybody the same thing. You go to the local bread, the insurance, buying cars, paying home mortgages, all this is in that play. And I worked at the sawmill, I worked Watkins, I worked Buckeye, and I've seen this all this time. These people be showing up go-getters, sometimes it's nothing but go-getters of the mouth. The one you get closest to the pole, he ain't the most. I can understand if this is a perfect world where everybody was created equal and you do what you need to do, and everybody was heard and seen. But we all know that sometimes won't happen. You know, if I was raised in the class with Jim Moody and, you know, and I was working with Jim and Jim saw me as being the person I need to be, old Joe Blow, they're doing the same thing, just as productive. Because in some production line, if If you don't do your job, it affects the person ahead of you and the front, and behind. But if everybody's doing the same thing, the chain is running smooth. You cannot pay Jim 15, me 12, and him 13, and that 10. It just won't work.
So why don't we
Sorry,
consider
sorry.
50 cents for everybody this year then? It sounds like to me that from listening to the majority of this board, the majority of this board wants to give everybody the same thing, whether it's 50 cents, $2,
Whether you make it 17 or 13.
or whatever. So and I'm seeing that the majority wants to give everybody the same thing. So why don't we look at giving everybody 50 cents? Next year, when we have to say, okay, this person is gonna have to have more than 50 cents, they're gonna have to have this much. And we'll see we'll see where our revenue is next year. And if we're good, we can give everybody the same. If not, then next year, we may have to give just the ones that were mandated. But this year, if we can do it, since I see the majority of the board wants to do that, that's what we need to do. Not that I agree with it, but that's what we need to do, and I'll go along with that.
The average employee don't know anything about that mandate business.
Oh, they do too.
So, I mean, if they talk it in their meetings, they might, but here's the thing, they'll say, well, Joe over there, he got $1 and I got 50 cents. It's gonna make a big difference on them. It's gonna affect them. But they don't understand the $15, what I'm saying, what we've got to get to. Maybe next year we won't be able to afford to give them anything.
We have to give the ones that's not making 15.
That-
Up to
yeah.
15, we have to do that.
I can promise you, they know that $15 an hour is
Oh,
coming.
yeah, they know that.
I can promise you, they know we got 2 bill closures, and they know that this county is gonna be in a
I think
mess next
everybody
year.
realizes that's been
I promise you,
mandated.
they know the hard time is
Okay.
coming. I've talked to several of them. It's
Okay.
not any secret that we got what we got coming down the pipe. I'm like Mr. Fiegel, I'm all about, if we got money to, I want everybody to make
That's right.
$20 an hour, 25 an hour. But reality is that
We need to get as much as we can.
It's not gonna happen.
We need to give as much as we can. Like I say, next year we could split it up.
Well-
This year we need to,
we're about to give 50 cents an hour, so potentially put somebody at $13.50. I'm just gonna say, if we do this next year, I'm not gonna be in favor of $1.50 across the board.
We won't be able to.
You won't have to.
won't be able to.
The figures, I'd say give everybody 50 cents, and then next year we'll deal with it.
But I gotta say though, we know it's coming, and we wanna wait until the last hour to potentially get caught with your pants down.
Keep the can.
So,
We know what we've got to do.
yeah.
So whether
I'm
we
happy
do
to
it this
say
year or
start
next year.
now, and don't have to find a home for it, just because we have it, but, you know. So, is that the will of the board, is 50 cents across the board?
That's fine with me for this year.
I'll work with that, as long as we can give everybody the same.
Mr. Chairperson, and then obviously sometime between now and in the near future, I'll do some research as far as the performance, based pay raises, because I know that that in the past that we did that and there was a reason it stopped. I don't know why, but I'll certainly research it and bring that back to the board.
Yeah, we cannot continue giving everybody the same thing.
I
We
understand.
cannot continue, and it'll show next year, you'll see. We'll have to argue about it next year, will we? Because it'll be right here in this budget numbers. And then we'll be really limited to what we can do. We don't have to argue about it then.
I ain't worried about it anyway.
When you're out of money, you're out. When it's gone, it's gone. Then you don't have no more.
So,
So, the draft you have in front of you is not accurate. I'll change it to, because that reflects $1 an hour
Okay.
increase. So I will change that so that the minimum is raised to just by 50 cents. If that's,
Yeah, that's fine. And remember, we don't have to do anything this year.
no, you don't
But-
have to.
You know, in an effort not to be caught next year and having to make up the total difference next year. But yeah, I like for you to look at the performance-based,
I will.
that's a good idea.
I'll look at that.
As long as you got the people that are in charge that are really looking at those,
I
the
know we
performance.
used to do that, and then and I was not here when it was changed, so I'm having to try to gather information. But for some reason, it was changed, and I will do as much as
I can tell you why the FSA changed it for the Florida sheriffs. It's exactly what Pam just said. Because your supervisor don't want to say something bad about their employees, so they give them all these good remarks. Every year, they're getting these good remarks that goes into their pay file, or into their personnel file. And then, when something really bad happens and you need to terminate an employee, you can't because they got all these nice performance evaluations that ran up.
Exactly.
How can
So-
you give go down and I've seen that, people go straight down and just mark
Excellent, 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 yeah.
excellent. They
And
never
that-
make any comments, they just say, I like that person, so they go all the way down.
But that's why FSA recommended the sheriffs not to use performance evaluations anymore.
You know, but you gotta not do that. That's not fair to the company, it's not fair to the employee, because like you say, if you need to terminate them, they go back to the lawyer, their lawyer says, oh, look at here, all their
I
performance.
mean, yeah, he's been an outstanding employee except for this
So
one
you gotta
time.
have department heads that are doing the right thing, doing a true evaluation, not just, sometimes it's just a lazy thing. Let me just go down and mark all of these and sign the end of it. Can't do that.
So,
System delay.
So I'll fix that.
From here
we
down.
want to deal with the sick leave portion next. Just really go over it, but maybe.
Well, what I tried to do is just give y'all a comparison of what different entities within the county do. Just to give you some idea of what the constitutional officers and the state does. So presently for the board, and we captured sick leave and annual leave, so you have some idea of the potential of payout upon separation. So we'll start with the board. The total, this policy was changed in 2009 to not pay out existing accrued sick leave, except for folks that were hired before January 1st, 1999. And I vaguely remember at the time that it was a financial concern, and that's why the policy was changed. We do not pool our sick leave. It's there if you need it. If you don't need it, then it goes away when you separate. For annual leave, there's a total of 480 hours that can be rolled over. So for folks that earn 200 hours a year, then the maximum payout upon separation would be 680 hours. The clerk, I think the clerk already discussed his policy, and that's a max of 7,500 hours upon separation.
$7,500.
What?
$7,500.
What did I say? I'm sorry, $7,500. The sheriff's office, it looks like the sick time is 25% up to 480 hours, which is the same policy of the state. Their annual leave is not to exceed 360 hours. So you have a total potential of 840 hours, right, Marty?
Yes, but there's one other caveat. If you have not been employed for 5 years, you're not entitled to a payout.
Okay. And I think that's probably about this, I mean, it takes a while to accrue that type of hours, so that's after 5 years. Thank
Yes.
you for explaining that. Tax collector is, let's see, it looks like there is no payout for sick leave and no payout for annual leave. It must be taken, it looks like. Supervisor of elections, maximum sick leave payout is 160 hours. Hours in excess were forfeited. Maximum annual leave payout is 160 hours. Anything in excess is forfeited. So you have a smaller amount upon separation than some of the other entities. Property appraiser, no cash value, no payout for sick leave, no cash value, no payout for annual leave. It just must be taken. So I'm assuming what folks do is if they know they're going to separate, maybe they take their leave and then they separate. I'm assuming, I The state of Florida is, the payout for sick leave is with at least, so folks with at least 10 years of service is 25% of unused sick leave credits up to 480 hours. And, the annual leave payout, time of separation is limited to a lifetime cap of 240 hours, is what it looks like. So there's not a lot of consistency in the leave payout. What, Kenneth is suggesting is for the sick leave is that for folks who are, once they reach 500 hours, that upon separation, the payout of 500 hours is at 50%, over 500 up to 750, 75%, 750 to 1,000, 100%, 1,000 to 1,250 hours. So when I calculated, and again, this is just, if everybody separated today, which obviously they're not going to, but I don't really know how to plan for that, except look at the snapshot. It looked like the maximum amount, if everyone, like I said, who is entitled to this separated today, it would be about $100,000, and that's spread over several funds. That's obviously not going to happen. So it could just vary from year to year. So if the board chose to do this, then I think we would just need to set aside, a certain amount of money in a reserve, like we do for uncompensated, or add that to the uncompensated absences. Do y'all remember how much we have set aside for that now?
Each fund is different, and it's based on the amount of reserves you have.
Okay. So there is some funds available for that.
Mr. Chairman, sick leave is given to employees as a benefit, okay? If they're really sick and they're out, they get paid. We all know that that's abused in many, many, many cases. But the people, just like Kenneth, for instance, that's been here, he's probably worked when he was sick because he had a lot of work to do and he showed up anyway. And so I understand his point of view, where he's been here and other people took a day or week off or whatever it took to keep that sick leave used up. If we went to the PTO, then it wouldn't differentiate between sick and vacation. It's your days off, whatever you want to go do, doctor's appointment or go fishing, or if you're sick. Now, what a lot of companies do with the PTO, you can only carry over so much each year. Say, for instance, you can only carry over 40 hours every year. So then when they separate, the most they could have would be 40 hours because they're required to use it up. To me, that seems like a more sensible way to go. Then you don't have to, worry about the people that make sure they're gonna use up their sick leave. And if they know they're gonna be leaving, they're sure gonna use up that sick leave. We know that. So as of right now, though, we don't have PTO. We've got this problem. But I think in the real soon that, this is just my opinion, we need to look at PTO to eliminate. Gary uses it, works out fine. But for right this minute, I understand if somebody's worked and been here, when they're sick and they leave and they lose all that when everybody else, or not everybody, but when other people use theirs. What do y'all think about going to PTO? What's the temperature of the board about that?
If it's an easier management practice, it's time employees can use at their discretion. I don't disagree that, I see several constitutional officers that it's basically use it or lose it kind of setup. I think that is easier to manage. I think it's communicated, there's no confusion to employees, to whomever. And that might be a way to address the future. But in respect to this consideration, there's really no mechanism that's afforded to you to be able to budget or propose what these expenses may be if there's a change. Is that true?
Well, there's no way to predict who's going to be sick or how sick they're going to be, or, you know, once folks enter drop, they have, I think, 8 years. I mean, there's no mechanism. Like I said, I can tell you if everyone who is entitled to this proposed policy, you know, if they separate tomorrow, I know what the payout would be. But that will change from year to year because we just don't know. I mean, we can look at it on a yearly basis, but we don't really plan for worst case scenario for other uncompensated absences. Right, Gary? That's just a percentage.
So the way things are currently structured, is there an accurate projection that can be given with a separation?
No, but there's not an accurate projection for annual leave either, because I don't know who's going to separate when. I mean, that's a moving target. I mean, all I can.
But it's a cap number, it's not something that's continuing to span.
Correct.
So you have a way to know to a certain extent, such as
Yes.
clerk, as to what that cost is gonna be. Maybe not when it's gonna be expensed,
Right.
but you know that it would be no greater than X amount of dollars.
And I think I've calculated the worst case scenario for now, but again, you know, somebody could hit 500 hours next month, and, you know, but the payout would be small if it's, you know, 500 hours. Because, I mean, that's just not a lot of money. Where you get into the maximum payout is folks that have accumulated, you know, more than 750 hours, and depending on what their hourly salary is. So I would, you know, just talking through this, if I had to guess, I would say the folks who are, at the higher end of our pay plan are typically the ones who don't use a lot of sick time because of their workload. And just to be brutally honest, you know, it seems like you work anyway, whether you're sick or not, or if you're on vacation or not. So I think they're just not in a habit of missing a lot of work, and they know it's gonna be waiting for them when they get back. I don't typically take time off because it's just not worth it for me.
Right. I'm in agreement with Kenneth's plan for right now, until perhaps this board decides that we wanna start with a PTO plan, and then that eliminates all of this.
I'm not in agreement with changing policy to an amount that you can't project and to an amount that's going to be excessive. So my suggestion is to continue to maintain the policy that's in place. And at that point, we can look at a PTO plan, but that's not gonna affect those employees regardless. Is that true? Because they were hired at this certain date under these guidelines?
Well, I would think you wouldn't wanna take time away from people, so you would wanna grandfather those folks in to
Yeah.
whatever the conditions that they were hired at. And this would be moving forward, which would not, I mean, the employees that have the most service are the ones who would keep the benefits, so it wouldn't have a big financial impact. I mean, so yes, you wouldn't wanna take that away from them, is what I'm trying to say.
So the policy could be maintained as is, and that would address the issues or concerns of the current employees. It would be the same policy.
Well, I'm sorry.
So-
What was your question?
The employees understand as to the agreement that came into effect at this date, that this is what the sick leave policy and the separation guidance is.
I think if your question is if existing employees understand the sick leave policy, yes. That
Right.
there is no payout upon separation.
Okay?
Help me with this. Sick leave, and what other leave do we have?
We have annual leave,
Annual leave,
right?
okay. What's the cap on annual leave?
Is the amount that you can roll over is 480 hours. So the maximum payout, if say someone was planning to retire or they're planning to leave, if they wait until after their anniversary date and get say they're entitled to 200 hours, then that maximum payout would be 680 hours, which is what we have been paying out historically. If they enter drop and they wish to, defer compensation or get the payout, upon entering drop, well, they have to get it before they enter drop. That maximum is 500 hours, because that's the maximum allowed by FRS. And then at that point, their maximum payout would be 180 hours. And that's so you don't pay out vacation twice, or annual leave twice.
Okay, annual leave, 680 hours, that's 3 months, right? Max, now, for the sick leave you're talking about, how much can you accumulate? And they pay at the end of.
So
Get it
currently,
related.
you can accumulate unlimited amount of sick leave. I don't think there's a cap on it, and I don't believe so. And then if you don't utilize it upon separation, you don't get any payout. So it's use it or lose it. We do not allow pooling of sick leave. So, we don't allow employees to donate their sick leave to another employee either. So, and it's a great benefit to people who, become very ill, obviously. And I believe the accrual is 8 hours a month for sick leave, right? So every employee, once they get through their probationary period, or is that the end of the year? They accrue 8 hours a month for sick leave. Fourth month, thank you. Trying to memorize all this.
4th month?
Fourth month, you start accumulating at 8 hours a month. So you get 1 day a month sick leave, and it's use it or lose it. But then if people use all their sick leave and they, and they don't come to work, we have a mechanism in place to address that as well.
I think that's what the proposal is so that they can accrue sick leave, thinking that it would potentially keep folks at work versus taking the day because they're gonna lose it anyway. You have each employee, if they're gonna lose it, they're gonna be out at least 1 day a month. They're gonna use that sick day. So I think that's the proposal made, and.
I think there should be a cap on all of this. If it's sawmill, if you don't work, you don't get no sick leave.
There's a cap.
Yeah, there's a cap should be on all of this.
There is a cap.
There is.
Yeah.
But
3
as
months,
far as
I
the-
believe, 680 hours is 3 months. Which is generous pay. Now, the other thing you talked about, the 5 years you in, what is it? After you in something 4 or 5 years, what did you call that?
Drop.
Drop, yeah.
Right, so employees who wish to have a payout of their annual leave upon entering drop, what that does is they can take that amount and it will be reflected in the amount of their retirement, so it raises their annual salary, which is a benefit to employees, or they can place it in a deferred compensation account.
Deferred compensation, yeah. Boy, I'll tell you what, government got to be where they're in some big troubles. All you have to do is sit down there and figure out what you want.
Well, that's
I'm not
where
saying that
FRS
Kenneth
comes.
done or anybody else done, but the smarter ones comes out with the best end. The one that doesn't, they're not quite as smart, he just lucky to me. Now, I am for paying the 680 hours. And there's someone who's been dedicated to us, has stayed so long, that's on the sick leave side, I'm for helping him too. But now, if we had 10 people at $100,000 a year,
No, sir, what I'm saying is that the
a
100,000.
possibility.
Right, I don't know.
But where would it come from? How would we do that? How would we save this kind of money? Are we in that kind of business?
What I'm saying is when I totaled took a snapshot of everyone who had over 500 hours of sick leave accumulated. And I did the calculations, for Kenneth's calculations, which may be a little complicated.
Yeah.
That I came up with a total amount, possibly, that would be around $100,000, which is what, same as it was last year. So, because it doesn't affect that many employees. I mean, first of all, you have to accrue that many hours, and it's going to take years to get to that point anyway. So it would take 5 years, you know, to get to that point of not taking any sick time.
So right now, the process is not broken,
No.
this is just an incentive.
Oh, well, leave it as it is, because it's gonna look like what we're looking at down the road. Next year, we might need $100,000 to save 2 people.
And I don't know that the payout any given year may be $25,000, it could be 10. There's
Yeah.
no way for me to predict it. I just
I
looked
don't
at
know why
the,
we're working with that right now. With what we got coming, with 2 mills down, Buckeye, Georgia Pacific, and Sawmill down. And then we got people coming here wanting raises on their little money that we giving them. Hey, we just sat right here and said that we ain't got money to give people, raises for working for. I don't understand how we talking about some more money for somebody else and other things. I know we're talking about it, we discuss it, and I hope we're intelligent with our discussion. But I think we need to hold the line.
So sick leave.
I agree.
Want to hold where we are?
Yeah.
Okay. So we will make no changes at this time.
How long would it take to convert to PTO? What would that process be like? Just do it?
I think I could bring, if you'll give me a little bit of time, what I can do is, just bring a draft policy to the board. But I would need some type of idea of what you would want that cap to look like. If you want it similar to the caps that we have in place now, and grandfather, the employees that are, say anyone hired after such and such a date, this would be our new policy. Is that what you're considering, or just convert everyone to PTO now and keep the caps the same? And change the payout?
I don't know yet.
Okay,
I mean, I'd like us to entertain
sure.
the PTO. I can't get into all the specifics right now.
Well,
It's
so,
not like a small thing,
okay,
to do what you say.
just change everything to PTO.
Yeah, but let's at least start thinking about that and maybe actively work toward that.
Yes,
And then we don't have to worry about all this. But I don't want the people, like, even like yourself, you've been here and worked sick a lot of times. And, so if you were deciding you didn't want this job, and you would lose all that when you worked sick, when you could have took that day off. So I'm in tune with that.
I'm sure we can bring something to the board that would be maybe a happy medium or mimic, another agency.
Does the board agree with that? Is anybody against doing that?
I think it's worth consideration.
I'll bring something back. I hope we find something that will bring us about 10,000 people together and put people into the water.
So
We gotta believe.
we'll go over the capital improvements.
So, yes, so what we did was we went back to the departments and asked them to prioritize, per department, their priority, which is in front of you. So we asked them to rank low, medium, high, and then if they had numerous high priority items, to number them, accordingly. So obviously, and then outside funding is all high one, because that funding is there. And, anything that is a lease payment would be a high one priority because we don't really have a choice.
This is a lot of stuff to sit here and try to read and also listen to what's going on.
Yes, ma'am.
I would like to be able to take this home and look at this. This is a lot of information, and I don't think anybody can sit here and comprehend all of this and listen to what's going on and make a good decision. We'll do that on Thursdays, what I would suggest. Take it home, look at it, read it, think about it, and consider that on Thursday.
That the board wants to do, you want to go through it now, or go Thursday?
Are there considerations for elimination, or are we willing to move forward on these priority rankings?
Well, that's up to y'all.
'Cause I mean, a number of these are grant funded, and I think that's why you said they're high priority.
Right, I
We've got to
would-
move
I
on
mean-
these.
Yeah, anything that's grant funded is obviously grant funded, it's in the budget. All of these items were included in the proposed budget. But that, again, that's at the will of the board. We provide, a capital list every year, within the budget and also in a separate report. So y'all can see every item that was placed within the budget.
Well, I don't think it's common to take all the requests and say, okay, this is what we got this year, let's go ahead and do that. A lot of times, it's a 5-year forecast, and we may not want to do all of this year. We may want to postpone some of it that's not as high a priority.
Yes.
To me, that's the prudent way to do it.
I mean, I think we've got several on the high priority, just a few on the high priority, I mean, it's, do we wanna go through those, or just sit on it until Thursday?
You want to consider those that aren't high priority, go ahead and go through those.
No, I mean,
Because aren't these listings
I would consider,
part of the capital plan, the 5-year existing plan?
I would consider the high priority, I mean, that's gonna, the high priority, that's what they're,
What needs to be done?
that's what, I mean, that's what the wishes are, that's come back. Do we wanna go through them now, or do we wanna wait until Thursday?
Are any of these that are high priority, are they, I understand it's a high priority. Does that mean they need them right now? Or it's a high priority that they can wait? What is, what are they saying? I haven't had time to read their justification, so.
Well, let's do this. If y'all wanna wait until Thursday, we will finalize our 5-year CIP and bring that all back to the board. You wanna do that? So-
That sounds good.
Okay, let's do that. We
To
just
me.
weren't able to get it all updated. Will that give us time? Okay, because we've already been assembling that. We just switched tracks a little bit, so we can bring the 5-year to the board.
Okay.
And then that way you'll see over the next 5 years what the requests are. Yes?
Just,
Well, good.
I got a question about the budget, Danielle, so the reserves for capital improvements is, what is that? And is that, and are any of those earmarked for anything?
Are you talking about in the general fund?
Yeah. In the general fund?
It's already been reduced to reflect the request out of the general fund. So if anything is taken off of this, it'll just increase those.
So what's in the reserve that's not been designated at this point in the general fund?
Yes, I've already reduced it to reflect it. Yeah.
So it's not going to change the budget, it's
It
just
won't-
going to move
yeah,
it
It won't
from,
change the total
Reserve
budget
to
amount, it'll
project.
just increase the reserves.
it'll put it back into the reserves. And the same for the 1 cent sales tax. So these items have already been budgeted, and it will just move it from the department budget to reserves.
Mr. Chair, and this is a good document, thank you. Thank you for doing this. And I think this is something that we need to continue to do every year. by the same token, last week, we talked about the 1 cent sales tax. And we were all gonna take a few days to go through that and come up with some good ideas for the 1 cent sales tax. Now, as of last Thursday, board members that were here, the 4 of us, it seems like to me, felt like the county should take control of 100% of the sales tax. But what we didn't know last Thursday is exactly how we were gonna do that. Okay, so I thought about it over the weekend a lot. I talked to some other people also, just to get some outside opinions. And I think using this same document with these capital requests, if you had the hospital and the sheriff's department, if they had the same kind of list and they came and presented it with their budget every year, instead of saying, okay, we're gonna give the whole 25% or whatever to each one and they can spend it as they want, and it's for capital improvement, let them present their needs at the budget, and then we'll decide out of those what we're willing to do, instead of saying just here, do what you want to do it. This way, they have to ask for what they want, they have to justify it. So that, after thinking about it a long time, that's what I came up with. And I also think that we should do the same thing for the TCDA, because that is vital for our community, to keep looking for industry and jobs, or this revenue that is gonna go down, down, down. We have to do something there. We have to, with TCDA and economic development.
I think that's fair.
Can I say something about that? So 90% of what we buy in the sheriff's office out of capital outlay is vehicle replacement. And right now, it is really hard to find commercial vehicles that are law enforcement vehicles. So if you do that, we don't know at the beginning of the year how many vehicles is gonna be available. We don't know how many fleet vehicles that are gonna be available. It really hinders us in the purchase of those vehicles. And those vehicles, whether you like it or you don't, it has to be replaced either out of capital outlay, or it has to be replaced out of the 1 cent sales tax. Replacing it out of the 1 cent sales tax is the fairest way for the entire county, because people who buy goods here are helping to pay for those vehicles. And not just the people who are paying property taxes or things like that out of the capital outlay fund. So if you take away our ability to grab those vehicles, and sometimes they'll run specials on them, or sometimes they'll do that, and we gotta come to the board every single time.
No, I'm not talking about coming all through the year every time. I'm talking about use it as a budget request. And I understand what you're saying, and the sales tax is a fair way, and I'm in support of that. And then if what you're saying, they run specials throughout the year, does that mean that, okay, this is a special, we're gonna go ahead and get it? Instead of waiting until, okay, I need this and I need to request this. Just because it's a special, I'm sure you don't just run out and say, oh, I'm gonna take advantage of this.
No, but if I know we're gonna have to replace 10 vehicles, or we're gonna have to replace 5 vehicles, and I can get the vehicle because somebody ordered too many fleet vehicles that somebody didn't pick up, and they have an excess, like right now, there's 47 Ford Explorers available, and they're $10,000 discounted, each one. So, yeah, I would buy my 10 vehicles then, while they're $10,000 off, versus waiting, until the rollover, and gotta pay another $10,000 apiece for them.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, I would be in support of continuing another year for this time ability with the sheriff's office, understanding they have been utilizing that in their capital outlay. They're trying to maintain the efforts that they're going through with that. So from my perspective, in respect to the 1% money, I would extend for this year to the sheriff's office that percentage, so that they are able to continue these savings.
So what I would ask is, Danielle can give you the figures. I don't think we use all of the 25% every year. So whatever if we are only using 18%, then give us 18% or 12% or 15%. We're okay with that. We just need that pot of money available, that when we find what we can get it. And we still have to follow the county's purchasing policy, and it's not that I call them up and, order 10 vehicles.
And I think that's what Commissioner Fiegel was probably saying, is for you guys in your budget, you guys have been doing this long enough, probably to know kind of what kind of deals are gonna come around, but budget that X amount of dollars for your, vehicle purchases. I mean, you guys probably spend, I don't know exactly what you spend, but you guys probably spend close to the same money.
Well, we were, up until these last couple of years, when the vehicle prices have went drastically up, so.
But you give them a budget, like you said, now there's still, you can probably buy 10 vehicles out there at a $10,000 discount. That if you budgeted for, you wouldn't budget, I guess, for 10 vehicles, but I mean, I think you would, if you budgeted for $200,000, and you could use $200,000 to buy what you can and replace what you can at that point. And I'm just using $200,000, I'm not saying it might be 250 or 150, but just.
It won't be 150, I can promise you, sir.
But.
I mean, our goal is, we try to replace at least 6 vehicles a year. I mean, once they get over the $100,000 mark, these Tahoes or anything else that we're buying, we started buying Tahoes because the Crown Vic went away. They don't manufacture it anymore. They're not selling the Taurus anymore. So you either buy an Explorer or you buy a Tahoe. Well, for a while, the Tahoe was cheaper. Now the Explorer seems to be a little bit more economical. But those are the pursuit vehicles and a pickup truck. Both of them make a pursuit pickup. We don't buy pursuit rated vehicles for administrative people because, even though you may get in a pursuit, you need a marked unit up there anyway. So only the marked patrol units are pursuit rated, and they cost a little bit more. So.
When we talked last week at the forums, and we were talking about, keeping the sales tax, because we don't know what's gonna happen. And I know, as I pointed out, we've got capital needs that we don't get. And it may come a time where we have to have more than the 50%. It may come a time where we have to change it to operations, and for me, if I'm here, that would be, we would have to be in dire straits for me to change it, to use it for operations. We'd have to everybody would have had to cut and do everything they had to do, and it would be an emergency type situation to use it for operations. But this way, it doesn't tie up all the money. And like you said, Commissioner Moody, we need to take charge of the money.
Need to take charge of it, but I don't want to cut the sheriff's department or the hospital short in any kind of way. You've got to have a hospital, you got to have a sheriff's department.
Yeah, and they bring their requests to us, just like everybody else brings them to us.
Right.
And they don't say they're not gonna get that, but there's a request, it's the business way to do it.
Taking control of it completely would be fine, but we need to be able to not overdo it in any direction. We need to, if they know they're getting 25%, they're gonna really tighten their budget down to try to stay in that 25%. They got a figure they got to go to. They gonna, like you said, they gonna look for a sale on the vehicle, instead of just going out there and buying. So, it gives them an incentive to, they know how much money they got to spend, how much in their pocket. They're not gonna go overboard with it, And they're not, the hospital or the sheriff's department, either one, I've never seen them waste any money in no direction myself, I've never.
And the other thing too is, we talked about from here on out, since they do produce 2 patrol pickup trucks now. Ford produces a patrol rated vehicle that's a pickup. Chevrolet produces a patrol rated pickup. We started buying more pickup trucks. Obviously, we have county dirt roads, but the other reason is that when it reaches the mileage for us that we don't feel safe running 130 miles an hour down the road in it, then we transfer it to the road department. So you're getting more and more use out of it. It's not like we're just trying to waste the money. I mean, but it does hinder us if we don't have a pot of money that we can use, that when we find these things, that we can submit it.
So Commissioner Moody, have you changed your mind since last Thursday? Is that what I'm hearing, or you still
Well,
want to count it to?
I just don't want to put them in a position where they cut corners. I want us, you know, it's worked as long as it has. I think the 25%, they're not gonna waste the money just so they got it in their pocket. I haven't seen that, they ever have, either of them. So I just rather keep it the way it is, you know,
So
really.
you changed your mind since last
Yeah, I
Thursday?
have.
Okay.
I would agree, I don't wanna put a limitation to be able to save that funding, understanding the availability. We can commit it for this year. If there's a need for operations to change, we'll consider that at the point. That's not been proposed anywhere that I've seen in this budget. Is there that kind of need?
I'm sorry, what
Is
needs?
there any kind of need for the use of this funding in operations currently?
No. I'm not.
So, at this point, we can make that commitment to the hospital and the sheriff's office for this fiscal year, so that we can have the opportunity to save that money on these vehicles or whatever expenses and have that availability.
And it also gives us a chance now to, because we didn't prepare it that way, because we've been doing it with the 25% money, it gives us a chance to prepare you for next year's budget, a budget of how much, or what our capital outlay will be, if that's how you wanna manage it.
So
from there
going
on out.
forward, we could commit this year to 25%, give you all the opportunity to plan next year for any kind of different adjustment or necessary move.
Yes, sir.
Well, what we've done is we went to a 1 year. So when you put that in your budget, you didn't know you were gonna get it, right?
What's that?
When you say that you have counted on the 25% for next year, you were assuming that you were gonna get it, right?
Yeah, I mean.
Even though we said last year we extended it for 1 year, so you didn't really have a guarantee that after this year you would
Don't
get it.
remember
but
that
you're-
there was a year limitation on it last year.
We did it 1 year. Last year, we said we're gonna do it for 1 year. So either you assume that this is gonna continue every year, or you say, well, the board will have to decide, we better not plan on that 25%, just in case the board changes their mind.
Again, Commissioner, the replacement has to take place, so we can plan it, and I can add it to the budget for general revenue, or we can continue doing it out, you know. So we assume that you would probably wanna finance it out of the 25%. Either that, or I gotta revise a general revenue budget to add purchase of vehicles in there.
Your budget was built because of the way that's spread across.
It has been
the
spread across,
26
yes.
And it's more fairly distributed across the board. It's not just coming out of the general fund, out of the Taylor County taxpayer
Correct.
pot.
Correct.
Mr. Shivers, if I may, if y'all want to look at your desk, there is a breakdown of the projected small county surtax for next year. So, that Danielle prepared. So, the estimated revenue is $2.5 million. If the distribution stays the same, 25% would be $625,000 to DMH, 25% to the sheriff, which would be $625,000, which was not included in your budget. So
Right.
this would be additional. The EMS allocation is $408,516 for the current ordinance. So the remaining balance to fund county capital is $841,484. Now, if you go to the estimated, or what was discussed on Thursday, and look at it a little differently, the estimated revenue is still $2.5 million. 50% to the county would be $1.250 million, and the EMS allocation would be $408,516, which would mean the remaining balance to allocate or keep would be $841,484. So it would be swapping the current allocation, and I believe the board just wanted to see these numbers. And then, there's another page that's attached that just gives some potential options, if you wanted to change the ordinance or not.
Well, you know, my big concern is TCDA. That's important to this county. It's just as important as what we're what we're talking about here. We have to actively look for industry. Our town is about to close up with the closure of 2 businesses. We have to look to the future, and not just for next year and the next year, but for, I'm talking about 10, 15, 20 years. We have to work to try to get jobs in here. We have to do that. So to do that, we're gonna have to put up the funds that's needed for the TCDA to do that. To me, that's critical. So whether we take, if the board decides to go ahead and allocate a certain percent to each one, then we need to reduce it a little bit and give that to the TCDA. Or we need to find more funding out of our general fund. Hold on just a minute. We need to find funding out of our general fund to put in a reserve account. Either way, we have to look for the future of economic development here is critical for us right now.
And there's funding available, either way you look at it. If you look at the, allocating it a little bit differently within 1 cent sales tax, now that would take an ordinance change, we discussed that last week. Or you could set up a line item reserve in your general fund for economic development if that's what you wish.
Yeah, but that comes out of the general fund, not the sales tax.
Correct.
And so
Yes.
what I'm thinking is that instead of allocating more money out of the general fund, when we know that general fund is gonna decrease, that perhaps the prudent thing to do would be to look at the sales tax, so it doesn't affect our general, you know, the general fund.
LaWanda, what was the projected for the 25%?
620,
625.
625.
So take 120,000 of it and give it to TCDA. We'll take the 500,000 and we'll work with that for our budget.
Well, if we took 125 and 125, that would be 250. That would certainly help. That would help a lot.
Help me, Commissioner, don't you sit on the TCDA?
I do.
And you're aware of the financials that were turned in, from
I
the
am
TCDA?
very much aware of it, and I do know that in 3 years, if there's no changes, that money will be gone, and then they're sitting at 0, and we have to plan for years and years and years to keep that going,
So you have a contingency that will operate for 3 years?
maybe.
No, ma'am, that's the projection.
We should see a big change in 3 years if they gonna
So,
utilize.
I hope so.
I hope so
And
too.
in that, there's no guarantee, plus or minus, as to grant funding or help from Commerce or our state partners. Is that true? There's no guarantee saying, hey, there's gonna be these grants in year 25, year 26, or year
No,
27. But what we do have is a reserve for contingency with an agency that's continually running a reserve. And we're trying to compete or take away from the sheriff's office and their operations. That's not reasonable. Now, I'm not against helping the TCDA, but they just came before this board and they brought forth their financials, and I appreciate that. That's certainly an improvement. We do have a new group that's working together in a cohesive way. That's great. But they've also told us, I believe they have a 5-year plan. And 3 years of those 5 years, they've proposed that they can take care of their budget. So I understand with the 100,000 from this year, and that they're also proposed to receive a grant, I believe, for 100 or 125,000 with that. Isn't that true?
That's true.
And so what I'm saying is, I see and understand how the sheriff is continuing to budget with these committed funds. And at this point, given the reserve and the proposal that's from the TCDA, I do believe that we can operate without changing the ordinance currently or removing this committed funding. And that's where I'm at with it.
Now, Marty has, and thank you for making that offer. I think that was thank you. And we've got the hospital that's been sitting on $1 million and not used it. So the thing is, I want to keep funding, I want to keep the TCDA healthy, because if something happens in the next year, 2 years, or whatever, and they get a lot of contacts, and one of them needs to fly to San Francisco, or New York, that, or fly somebody here, that could go into their funds and break them. I just wanna make sure that there's money available and that we don't wait and let them go broke in 3 years and then all of a sudden they have zero. Where are we gonna come up with a substantial amount of money for that operation to continue? If the sheriff, if y'all could do without 125, and certainly the hospital is sitting on a lot of money that they've not used, we could probably even reduce theirs even more. And then if the need comes up later, that they, you know, that we could change it. But we have to look after the future of this county. It's just as important as the sheriff's office, it's just as important as the hospital.
Exactly. I'm at Commissioner Field, I agree, and I think, I know, you're not, nobody here is wanting to hurt the sheriff. Nobody wants to hurt the sheriff, nobody wants to hurt, y'all do a great job, nobody, I mean, don't take that, y'all do a great job, nobody wants to hurt the hospital. But just what you just said, that last part is planning for the future.
Yeah.
We have changes coming down the pipes. And it's not to hold that, the money, say, oh, we're just gonna take the money away. I mean, the money is still there. I think it's about controls. Having controls, you know, when I give the average cost of I'm just saying the average cost of a vehicle, you $75,000 and you're replacing 6 vehicles, and that's roughly $400,000. I mean,
That's just the vehicle, that's not the emergency equipment that goes in the vehicle.
yeah, so, and trying to plan for the future, I mean, just, if that's what we do, 125, if the sheriff would just give back, you know, 125 in the hospital, we got $250,000. I'll say what I said last week. Just because we have an additional $250,000 don't mean we have to have a home. I mean, I feel, but, you know, I do think it's a great plan for this board to control the money. I do,
Mr.
but
Chairman.
we do still wanna keep these guys whole in their operations and what they've got going on.
I agree with you, and you know, I anticipated the sheriff's department to be here, I anticipated the hospital to be here, and they're gonna put up, and I would too, if I was there, I'd come and I'd plead and I'd give all the reasons why we need to keep doing that. But we have to look at, we wanna give them what they need in the hospital, but we need to really be careful, we need to control the finances.
I will say again, we do still have to follow your purchasing policy, so.
And to dovetail off that, I will take some responsibility for the hospital not spending all their money at once, because our staff has to process those purchase orders. It takes a lot of Marcia's time, because she processes every request for the sheriff's office and for the hospital. So if they were to bring her $1 million worth of requests, and especially if they're expensive items and we have to go through the RFP process, it is very time consuming. So I did ask them not to bring everything all at once, so they just keep a steady request. And I just want to be completely fair about that. It doesn't slow the sheriff's office down, but your requests are much simpler because we can purchase them off state contract and don't have to go through the bid process for those.
We try to always make our purchases either come off of the Florida Sheriff's bid list, or if it's a local, and here lately, we've had a couple of the local dealers meet the bid list price, and if they meet the bid list price, we'll buy them locally.
So, go ahead.
Well, last year, I looked what we spent for the hospital, we bought some much needed equipment. I don't think we was completely antiquated. But we know the hospital is 20 years old. You know, the sheriff department, we all want to go to sleep at night and wake up safe the next day. I heard Marty talking about maybe $500,000. And we also talking about maybe the hospital cut $125,000, maybe $250,000. We might need to put it in a capital reserve for economic development, and I believe we have another, somebody said, I believe the elderly care, we give them $25,000 it is, and somebody mentioned $5 in our budget already. I think we probably could do some of that. And we control that budget, that $250,000.
I mentioned 30,000 to the senior center, but I don't know that that would be any of this 1 cent money. I don't know if that would be 1 cent money, but regardless, that's,
Yeah.
that's a whole nother subject.
Well, and again, you have to change the ordinance for that, you know,
That's a no-brainer there, you can easily do that.
Okay.
the
That's
30,000
good.
for the senior citizen center.
Do we have to change the orders to get that
If you use.
25, that, $125,000?
No, the ordinance change would only be needed if you were using the funding for any operations other than EMS.
Okay.
So the simplest, if you wanna, allocate $30,000 to the senior citizen center, then that's something that you can set up you already have a department for them, or no? Is it just
I do in the general fund.
in the general fund, correct? So,
Is it gonna be for operations? If it's for operations, you have to change the ordinance.
Correct.
Well, hold on just a minute then. Isn't the EMS operations?
yes, but y'all changed the ordinance.
Yeah, so we could easily change the ordinance.
You
We've already
absolutely
done that for EMS.
Right, and that's listed as one of the choices. You can change the ordinance for any of these operational expenditures that you wish to allocate funding for.
Yeah, if we, and I forgot about the senior center, thank you for bringing
But,
that up.
but I'm gonna say this, I don't think we need to do a whole lot of changes right now from what I see. If we can get $125,000 off the sheriff, $125,000 off the hospital, we need to put that money somewhere that we can save it, and then if TCDA now, with the $250,000 they got in their budget, next year they won't run out. We'll be back here next year doing the same thing. It's time then that we make that hard decision, what we need to do for TCDA. I love TCDA, that's, my run in this county was, get something in this county that we can keep our local people here, and our young people especially, that they can make a decent living. Now, that's our responsibility, and we need to do that.
Commissioner, are you saying, I'm just trying to understand, are you saying that if we put the 250 in a special reserve for the
Special reserve.
TCDA?
Not only TCDA,
Right now, my question is, do they have to come and ask us when they want to dip into that 250? Is that kind of where you're leading to?
they got $250,000 operated this year. If they need some more than that next year, they can come to us and ask.
Okay, and so, but if we get the 125 and the 125,
Put it in a special account.
that goes into a special account, and if they need it, they have to come ask for it. Well, what's the difference in that? And I'm okay with that, but what's the difference in that of them having to come ask us for any of these other entities to use the same process? Come ask us when you need it. I mean, I'm just asking, I'm not.
Well, I think all of them need to come ask. Now, for what I can understand, and everywhere I go, they're harping on, in the light of what's happened already. I was in a forum Friday night, and in the light of what happened already, what would you do? Well, I wouldn't spend everything I got if I had to, unless I had to. Okay? So, with that being said, I think we need to put in a special account and vote at that. Now, and the one that needs the most grease, that's where we go. If it's TCDA to bring some company in that's doing well and don't do well in some provinces, that's what we do.
Is all the remaining, county capital funding, is that all allocated?
Not if it's in reserves.
And the 841 goes to the reserve?
Oh, no,
So,
I'm sorry.
right now, the current transfer to fund the capital for the county that's budgeted is $1,370,935.
That's-
So if you'll look, the balance to fund county capital is $841,000. So that difference comes out of reserve,
1 cent sales tax.
of the
reserve.
1 cent sales tax.
And we have,
Yes.
we have how much in that, do you remember?
After I did the reduction to balance, there's 2.7 million in reserves right now.
and 1 cent sales
and
tax.
1 cent sales tax.
So is there not a way for potential expenses for TCDA to be expensed out of that reserve?
Yes, you just have to change the ordinance.
No, so if it comes out of the county, you wouldn't use it out of this county capital fund, correct? Why couldn't it come out of the general fund?
Oh, yeah. If you could allocate funds in the general fund for the senior citizen center and for the TCDA.
So if they had an expense because of an industry that was coming to town, they could appear before the board and request the reimbursement for those expenses.
You could do it either way. I think Commissioner Fiegel preferred the 1 cent sales tax.
Yeah, because I don't want to take away from our general fund, because knowing what's gonna happen. Everything that we can use out of the 1 cent sales tax, that's what we need to do. We don't need to obligate ourselves anymore. This is an easy way to do it. That's the only, but I'm just coming from the business standpoint.
Either one of the groups come to us and with a requirement or a need some money, we're gonna try to come up with the money anyway. We're not gonna let them do without. You know, a major piece of equipment at the hospital broke, and they had to have it to keep running. We would, you know, like air conditioner or something like that, or a boiler. We've always come up with the money for them.
Or sinkhole.
I
We had a
mean,
sinkhole this year, we had.
yeah, well, we had a sinkhole this year, but the thing is, we're not gonna leave them running short anyway. We're not gonna leave the sheriff's department running short. If he comes in here with a need he's got to have, we're gonna work with him one way or another, right to the end. I mean, we're not gonna cut them short, so I mean, it doesn't matter if you got the money in one pocket or the other. We're still gonna spend it if they need it, if they can come up with legitimate reason to have it, we're gonna.
That's true, I agree with that. We're just trying to figure out what pocket we're gonna take it from. We're gonna
Right.
take it from sales tax, or we're gonna take it from our, general fund. And my perspective is, take it out of the sales tax and not affect our general fund. But yeah, I agree with you. We're not gonna let them, we're gonna take care of them.
You know, they fixing to have to put a roof on the hospital and a lot of things.
That's
I
right.
mean, you know, the hospital, it's gonna be a bunch of money.
That's right, and I agree,
Yeah.
they gotta have it fixed.
They finally got a handle on all their mechanical parts out there. They've got some new supervision out there running the boilers and stuff, and they really, where I think they need to be with that.
I just wanna say one quick thing. I don't want anybody to leave here, or anybody that hears this, to think that I'm trying to take something away from that hospital or the sheriff. I wanna make it real clear, I am not trying to do that, okay? It kinda sounds like, it might be thought that I'm trying to take away. I don't wanna take away from, I'm exactly where you're at. I'm just trying to look at what pocket we take it out of. And to me, the best pocket to take it out of is the sales tax.
Mr. Chairperson, can I just ask the clerk a question? Gary, do you recall the amount of economic development reserve that we had?
370.
Okay. I know years ago, there was a line item set aside, this has been many years ago. And then at one point, it was put back into the general fund reserves.
It was,
About 2,000.
$173,000, and it was rolled into capital in 2018.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds familiar.
$173,000.
Yeah, Flavor Day was on the county commission when they done that. And after Clay left, and TCD wasn't available live of the county commission, they took it back.
That's what I was trying to recall.
In the
So
general
historically, sir,
In the general fund.
And yes, sir.
it was, but we didn't have the 1 cent sales tax fund at that
No,
time.
we didn't.
So, but that was the amount that was funded in the past for something very, and I think at that time, the TCDA may have been receiving a larger allocation than they receive now.
They were, and I remember, I was here when they still had that reserve. And I remember when we were so tight, and we couldn't, there was a couple of years or so, or maybe more than that, we could not give our employees a dime. We couldn't give raises. And so when we were looking to, what can we do? And that was one of the things that we took away, because we had to but, we're in a different spot now. We've lost our major employers, we're in a different spot now.
So,
Well, we're at a point too, that, people look at what the TCDA has done in the past with that $100,000, and I've had constituents complain about, where did that money go? What did they spend? No jobs were created, you know, and it kinda gets, you know, constituents say, I mean, we give them $100,000, give them $100,000, but they don't ever come up with nothing. But now, maybe, hopefully, it's gonna turn in a different direction. The group we've got now can make some things happen, and I know that.
Yeah, and I've heard that, and I've even questioned that, even, you know, and I've been there, I've seen, I know, and it's been very discouraging. 2 years ago, I wouldn't be where I'm at now with trying to, you know, but now that we've lost these two industries, and now that things, Commissioner Moody, things are really different over there now. And that's not to say that even though we've got the best people possible that I think that can be there, it doesn't mean that next year they're gonna bring in a big manufacturing company. Like Dan Simmons said the other day, the average time is about 3 years. So, you know, and you can't expect just because we got good people, we're gonna land something right now, but you gotta keep working at it, and it takes money. It takes money to hire that person that has the expertise, that can go out and identify these people and go meet with them or bring them here. And most companies, or they're trying to relocate, they bring them in, they fly them in, and they take them and they show them. So I just wanna make sure that the funding is there if that happens. We don't wanna miss an opportunity. We can't miss an opportunity.
that's what the money pays for, the opportunities to come to this community. I mean, it's, like I said, it's not saying they're gonna break ground here, but if you're seeing the opportunities come, it's kinda like throwing on that rag against the wall, eventually the rag gonna stick. That's something.
Let me say something. But one time there was some money out there at the airport, and that was a building. It belonged to TCDA, and it belonged to the airport. Whatever happened to that? It was $200,000. Using it now.
I believe that if we're talking about the same thing, the sale of that building is reflected in the TCDA reserves. At one point in time, it was obligated, and then there were, I think, and I'm just shooting off the hip, but from what I recall, they held it in a separate reserve just to give it some time and work through the process with the FAA, and now that is available to them. And I think that's part of the reserve.
It wasn't spent because someone raised the question that it was not done right by selling that building, so it tied the money up. You know what I'm talking about.
But I'm saying again, now, when this last company before left Superbug, Snyder Lance left here with a binder on that clause, that this building will never be used for a salty product again. Now, in light of how we feel about whoever was there, that got changed, and it didn't get changed because the county commissioners done it. It got changed because somebody else done it. And went to those Snyder Lance, and that Snyder Lance lifted that
That's right.
writing so we could get,
That's right.
Super Pub in there. I was on board when that happened.
Yeah.
So, now another reason we wasn't particular about all this, growth, we was fat, dumb, and happy, and we said, we don't want nothing else to come in there. Now, whoever was responsible for that, saying that, it was said several times, go to the county line, stumble off and explode out in the gut. I've heard that remark too. But we've got to understand that some of them people we had in here for TCDA and the directors and whatnot, they were told we only will accept certain things. Now, one of them was the workforce housing. It was shut down for 3 years because somebody told them not to bring it. Now that happened.
It wasn't me.
I don't know who it was. But anyway, it's happening now. You know? So we have to be careful about how we, what we say, what we do, and how we get there. Now, we need somebody. We was almost, but we need to keep up. Whatever we bring in safe our people too. So there need to be some environmental concerns on that. You know, there's a lot of stuff out there that probably would come this way, but is it safe for us to have people on it? So we hoping the people there now will be thinking about community and the county. What the benefits.
Yeah, I was just gonna mention the money that Commissioner Guest was talking about, and that when the TCA sold the property they had in the past, that hasn't been a part of the audit. Now, you know, that's probably a question that needs to be asked. Was it part of that audit if they presented this week, or do they have another account out there with some money in it? So,
Okay.
we need to, I can ask that question. I mean, I can contact them and ask that question. Just make sure.
Right.
So, get back to the, 1 cent money. Marty, is that 500,000, is that fair for you
Yes, sir.
to work with?
We can work with that. I just need to know
I
how
can
you want
agree
us to
with
use
that.
the purchasing. We're gonna continue purchasing it the way we've been.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that fair for the board, the 500,000?
That starts on the October the 1st budget year.
Take 125 and 125, allocate it to the TCDA.
Well, I wouldn't.
I just wanna make sure that we have at least 500,000 to work with, so.
I wouldn't say, TCDA, I would say we have additional funds out there. I mean, I'm not, it's not, the TCDA not saying they can't get any of it, but I wouldn't say, hey, we're gonna have $250,000 out there to TCDA right now. I mean, cause next year, and we do understand they got, I wanna say it's $300,000, I believe is what they have. I wouldn't see them spending $300,000 in a year, but next year, I know they're gonna come back and they're gonna make a budget request.
So do you want to hold the $250,000 in a reserve, or do you want to allocate some of that for the senior citizen center?
Is that where the senior citizen money's gonna come from?
No, well, that's,
It normally-
it normally comes out of general.
That would come from the general fund, right?
The last, or the current year, it was funded out of the general fund.
Well, I wanna put the 250, I mean, if a reserve, I don't wanna find it a home where we're sitting up here and
So then
say,
it would just sit in the regular reserve.
yeah, I don't
And the
wanna
ones
sit
that
up here and
sell
say
tax.
that money
Yeah,
that we
in the
got,
reserve.
money already sitting in places that, you know, for the, we're supposed to say the old hospital's probably got money sitting out there in it, that it could be in the reserve, but we don't even look at it because it's just, I don't wanna say it's for something.
Okay, so so you want the 250 in a line item reserve for a future operational cost? Because then you'll have to change, again, I mean, that's fine, you can allocate it, but in order to expend it, you have to change the ordinance.
Why can't I just put it in why can't we just put it in a reserve and not say it's for anything at this moment?
Oh, that's up to you.
Isn't there, there is
So
a
what
reserve
But you have to-
contingency? Isn't there already a reserve
There's
contingency?
already a reserve.
So-
There's already a current reserve for capital projects is how it's listed.
So isn't there also the need this year because of the shortage to pull from the reserve? So if there's this 250, wouldn't that eliminate that need? You wouldn't have to take from reserve to balance into capital expenses for the county. You already have that reserve. You wouldn't be pulling from your reserve from contingency. You'd be funding the county capital needs,
We'd still have to.
but not at the same amounts.
Yeah, the net would be, you'd still have 250,000 more left.
In the reserve.
Right.
It wouldn't be, it's not designated, it's sitting in a reserve for contingency in that.
But we've already got money sitting in reserves. Like you said, we've got the old hospital, we've got some land sales or something,
The
we've still
sale-
got that, and
right.
I'd like to see it dedicated. So whoever it is, they say, we know we've got that if we need it. Now, if you put it, a 250,000 in a reserve, every Tom, Dick, and Harry will be here asking for some of that money. historically, the board has never said no to anybody. So you gotta be careful that you're not gonna open up a door there that anybody can come ask for, and it's difficult to say no when we know that the best use would be toward economic development. Now, the senior center, Lord God, I know that they need help and I'm all for that. Is that something that we have to do compared to like TCDA that's we've got to do because we've got to have industry? And I want to give the seniors, but I'm just making that comparison. It's important to me to allocate money for economic development.
Why couldn't we take that money out of the money from the old hospital to give it to the senior center?
Give some of it, I wouldn't give it all.
And I'm okay with that, some of it, not all of it.
I'm just thinking what they need,
Made a
you know.
request for an amount, and, you know, whether it comes from the old hospital or, you know, what, I mean, but in allude to what your comparison, I mean, we don't have to do anything at sports complex either, but
That's right.
for the kids, but for me, the kids, the senior center, hand in hand, we pour into the sports complex for our kids to have, to make it a good experience, a better experience for these kids year every year. The same as we'd like to keep doing for this senior center, is give them a place to go with activities and meals and et cetera.
And I agree, we don't have to do that, but we want to do that. And if
But-
we can do that, I am all for that, absolutely. To me, they're just as important as the kids.
But
I
I'm
agree.
just saying for the money, if we designate it to TCDA, then that's where it'll always lie. We won't have the option to do anything else.
Well, we've got some other reserves, you know, just like the money from the hospital, we've got others. And then,
We got that sale of that property at the beach.
that's what I'm
They
saying.
could, you know, if TCDA needed that money, we got to give to them.
So you don't want to dedicate to the TCDA?
I don't want to dedicate it to them. I want us to have control. We need control over it. We don't need to go to dedicating it where we ain't got no more
Well, let's
control
have
over it.
control of all of it, the 100%, like we talked last Thursday then. Let's
Well,
do it all. Let's
That's
do
what
it
I'm
all.
hearing. We're doing it anyway that way. We got control of it either way it goes,
I think
you know?
next year, maybe the sheriff and the hospital come back with in their budget. And
I would agree, have a request, louder.
A specific, just like the county's doing, a specific capital request
Yes.
outlining.
This year, you know, I mean, it's just kind of last minute, I mean, we're trying to help these guys and keep them whole, and they agreed to back out 125, and we'll do the same with the hospital next year, but they can bring this as a part of their budget, and we have control.
I'm all for that.
It,
Yeah, I have to.
it would be simple to, if you want to take the sale of the hospital funding, which is over $300,000. If you want to change that to set it aside for economic development, that's simple. It doesn't take an ordinance change, or you could take the property sale on Marina Road, that's $100,000, whichever y'all want to do. But it's fairly simple to just change the reserve from the sale of the old hospital to economic development. And
You don't have to commit that.
you don't,
You can
but
still expense that at a number of different ways
You could.
without it being committed.
you could.
But now,
And that's the way it
I
currently
was
is.
just, I was just offering some options.
what I'm reading, $115,000 will be a shortfall taxes next year from GP.
Sir?
Do I read $115 million will be a shortfall in taxes from GP?
That might be the value where there's a shortfall.
That was the value this year.
Okay,
The
but,
value decrease this year was $115 million for that, but it was offset by the increase in real property, so it's kind of like a wash.
Okay,
and at the end of the day, we still have a surplus, which will be more now if you change the amount of the employee. Remember, the proposed salary increase for employees was $1 an hour. Now, that's spread over numerous funds, but if you change that to 50 cents, that's going to cut that amount in half, and you'll have that additional revenue as well. So you can just allocate $30,000 out of that revenue for the Senior Citizen Center and or the TCDA, whichever you wanna do.
Yeah,
There's
I
so
like
many
the idea
options.
of the senior center, I'm okay with that, but I don't want anybody to think that we're gonna do that every year. We can do it if we can, but I'm having trouble. I'm trying to wrap my head around why it's okay to dedicate a specific amount to the hospital, and it's okay to dedicate a specific amount to the sheriff, but it's not okay to dedicate a specific amount to TCDA, who is
We
got
already
our
have,
future in our hands.
we've already given them $100,000.
$100,000 is nothing.
It's a lot when you got a $300,000 surplus.
They do, but I'm looking for the future.
Right, but the future's funded, they've got a $300,000 surplus, they've said they can operate for 3 years, there's a potential $125,000 grant. And I'll say, for my sake, I appreciate the TCDA, and I'm encouraged by the new group that's working there. But I will say, I never called the TCDA when I had an issue with a hurricane, and I don't call them when I have an emergency, and I don't call them when I need a hospital or an operation. And that's my justification for saying, because of understanding the way that they budgeted, understanding the needs that they continue to have, that's how I'm gonna support these groups. And that's where I'm at, and that's where I'm gonna continue to be.
Right, and I'll tell you, when you don't have, your family can't find a job, because we have not provided for that.
Well, those
It's gonna
things
be
go
the
all the way
same
back to
thing.
the
I
decade,
understand your,
Commissioner.
I understand, let me finish and then you can talk, okay?
Certainly.
But I understand your rhetoric, and
It's
it's
not rhetoric.
emotional.
It's
and-
factual.
And it's emotional, and I understand, I wanna be able to have that support from the sheriff and them, I don't take away from that at all. But I do, I've got sense enough to know that we have got to get jobs, or we're not gonna have that money to give to them, because our sales tax is gonna go down, our general fund is gonna go down. We have to look for the future. It's just as important, and I know you get all emotional, well, I wanna be able to call and I wanna help in the hurricane, and that's good. But we also need to ensure that our children and anybody right now has an opportunity for a job, and we have lost jobs, and we've got to get them back.
Voting. I mean, I agree with you. I mean, I'm in support of the sheriff, I'm in support of the hospital, I'm in support of the TCDA, I'm also in support of, planning for the future and this, controlling this money. Offer, you know, it sounds like we're gonna move forward with 500,000 to the sheriff, 500,000 to the hospital, there's 250,000 there. Where are we gonna put it? That's where we decide where we're gonna put it.
We don't want it wherever Tom, Dick, and Harry organization can come and beg and plead, and they can present to us like they can't live another day without it. You hadn't been here when they've done that.
Oh, I have, we've said that. We've
I'm
had
telling you.
several. We've
And
had
then your
several.
money, and then your money's gone when you really need it to
I saw-
try to get
I
jobs
saw
in here.
several of them standing right behind there, and we've not done a thing. So, I mean, I haven't been here, not as long as you have, for sure, but I have been here and I have saw no. So,
Mr. Chairman, my suggestion is that the remaining funds go to the remaining balance to fund the county capital. And it moves forward. We have a need in the future. We have a reserve there that we can utilize. And we're not creating new line items. We have this funding that's been moved from these two line items, and it can move down into fund the county capital.
Mr. Chair, my suggestion would be that we, take the 125 that was graciously offered to us, take 125 from the hospital. We take that 250 and we do dedicate it to TCDA for economic development. That's where I am.
you saying now take 375?
Say again?
So you're saying now take 375?
I'm saying take 125 and 125, and that's 250. Take that 250, dedicate it to TCDA. Let's don't just put it there for anybody to come get it. let's put it there for economic development.
Well,
And they're not gonna waste it, I promise you, they are not gonna waste it.
I'm not saying they are, but at the same time, we're worried about somebody coming up and asking for money, and we're worried about saying no. I guess that's the point where you just see how strong you are, and we all are, in being able to say no.
Take it out of general fund. If they come and they got to have it, take it out of general fund.
I'm not saying you have to say yes. I'm telling y'all.
Say if they have to have it.
If they have to.
Right, if they have to have it.
So, I would be in support of just putting it in the reserves. TCDA is gonna come back next year, they're gonna make a request. I mean, just like the sheriff's gonna come make a request, the hospital's gonna come make a request. If their request is $200,000 versus $100,000, then guess what? It's either we can do the $200,000 or hey, we can do this. It's just like the rest of them, they're gonna come back and ask for money. And you have the control and you have the opportunity to say yes or no.
Deb's
Or-
help me out here. You know what economic development means to us? You know what jobs means to us.
I'm not saying any of that, that's not me saying jobs don't mean anything. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying control the money. And that's like this hospital money sitting over there. It's just sitting there.
Let's control it all then. Let's control 100% of it, and whoever needs it, come and ask
Well,
for
I
it.
think that's what we're doing, right? That's
If
what
you're
I-
dedicating 25% to one and 25% to the other, they've got that. They've got it.
No, we're dedicating 500 to one, 500 to the other. Fine.
I
And
made
then
my
next-
point,
and
so
then
I'm
next-
done.
Next year, they're gonna come and they're gonna make a proposal, just like everyone else.
Understand.
That's what, yeah.
Whatever the board wants to do, I understand.
And then 30,000 for the senior citizen center, you wanted added to the proposed budget for next year. Yes.
I mean, it's just, for us, I mean, if we can do it, we can do it, if we can't, we'll just not be able to do it. So, but where are we gonna bring that from this year?
We have additional revenue. Yeah, general fund.
You're gonna have a surplus.
Yeah.
You said
So
30?
just, yeah, so just bring it out of general fund,
Yes.
okay?
And if I, go ahead.
I just need a clarification. So for next year, we're earmarking 500,000 out of the 1 cent sales tax for the sheriffs to purchase the capital outlay, following the same purchasing policy we use right now. Sending it through, that's clarification.
That's what I hear, I think.
Now, what happens if for some reason this projected sales tax doesn't come through and we're committed to 500 and 500, what we gonna do then? Instead of going percent-wise, I'm just making a point, that's all, asking a question. If you dedicate a specific amount and it doesn't come in, what are we gonna do? What are we gonna do?
So if you just do the same 25% you've been doing, I don't think we've used the whole 25% in a year. I mean, whatever's there just rolls back over to you. I mean,
For the
It rolls
reserve,
back over to whoever it's allocated to.
it does roll over to us right now, but again, I mean, you don't have to roll it back to us after the 25%. I mean, it can roll back over to wherever.
And they can't expend it until it's there.
Yeah, we
I
can't
mean,
expend it
that's
until it's
something that
there.
we receive monthly.
No, that's not how budget is set up. No budget is set up that
I
way.
thought they didn't spend it unless we received it.
No budget is set up that way. You're budgeted $100,000 in that budget, you can spend $100,000 October 1. For any budget.
Then why do you charge the sheriff's office reimburse the revenue? I thought.
I track the sheriff's office because I have to true up at the end of the year for the sheriff and DMH because they're allocated to 25%. So we continue to get revenue for the 1 cent through November. So the fiscal year ends September 30th, but we get that revenue through November because DOR is 2 months behind on revenue. And we pay for the fiscal year payables through the first board meeting in November. So we could be paying for this fiscal year, something that they bought in September with that first board meeting in November. So I track it in a spreadsheet, and then I amend the budget for DMH and the sheriff with that revenue, and I'm in the counties carry forward also. Because I'm estimating 2.5 million, it could be 3 million that we get. And so I have to adjust the, carry forward.
Yeah, what if
For
somebody,
everybody.
what if, you know, with the loss of these jobs and everybody that we've experienced, that people cut back on their spending and this sales tax money goes down, I can see a scenario where it decreased instead of increased, given our economic situation here. And I think a lot of people are beginning to think more about their purchases.
I think that's
So-
what's nice about the 1 cent sales tax, is it doesn't depend on just the citizens that live here. It depends on the citizens that are coming in on the weekends to go scalloping. It depends, I mean, all those people pay that 1 cent
does.
sales tax when they buy goods. So it's not just the residents. The second thing I want to say is I never, ever make a purchase until I email Danielle to find out what
He asked me.
is available.
He asked what's been encumbered and what the balance is.
But Marty, and I totally see what you're saying, and hopefully we'll continue to have those people that come in, because they spend a lot of money.
They do.
But if the local people cut way back, that's still gonna have an impact. It's still gonna have an impact. So I'm just, you know, I'm just concerned about that. Whereas if we say we took 20, I'm just throwing numbers out now, if we took 20% and 20% and 10%, and then whatever that equates to, we know we're gonna be able to cover.
I'm good with 20%. If you guys need to cut it to 20%, I'm good with that. And then we work off of that 20%. I'm just saying that for us, again, I don't make any purchases until I check with Danielle anyway on what the balance is, so I know what we can purchase. And we split it up. I mean, I don't buy them all in the same quarter. I may buy 3 this quarter, 3 this quarter, depending on what is unencumbered in the 1 cent sales tax. And so, I mean, we've probably got, I think there's $80-something thousand that is encumbered that we haven't paid a vendor because they haven't gotten the emergency equipment right yet. And until they get it right, we're not paying them. And so, but that's encumbered, so it's not part of the figure that she gives me that we have available. And so, but again, we don't, so if you wanna make it a 20%, then just say 20% and then,
Well, see, if we did that, if we did a 20 and a 20 and a 10, then we don't have to worry about how much or more or how much less sales tax we get. Hopefully it'll be more. And at least that way, we're not committed, okay, we've told y'all 500,000.
and
so
we'll work within those
we're gonna
parameters
be
if you wanna
depending
make
on
it,
that 500,
yeah. We'll work within the parameters. I mean, if it's 20%, we're working within that parameter.
thank you.
Okay?
Appreciate that. So what?
And
if
if
we
that
did
and it really does make it easier for y'all, and it makes it easier for Danielle to figure the percentages rather than.
It is, if we did 20%, and then, took the other 10% allocated in.
But I apologize, I do have something else I have to do, and the sheriff is he's doing his recertification stuff at the conference. So, I mean, if you need anything else from me, please ask me now. Tomorrow night, I have a conflict with y'all's board meeting and another board meeting, and we do have an agenda item tomorrow night, and it's just the same thing that we've done every time. It's a budget amendment for what we've paid out for grants, and that grant money's back, plus the money that the state sends us for equalization of pay for the officers. And then of course Gary we have something on there about from the prior year budget that's not us asking, that's the auditor saying we got, but the other one is us asking just to amend our budget to reflect those.
Well, Marty, I want to say thank you to you, because what it's all about is, you know, you're trying to help us, and we're trying to help you, and working together to achieve that, so that's what we should be doing, instead of taking a hard line. No, I want 25%, I won't take less, and that is it. But you understand the other needs that we have, and so that's what these workshops are about, to try to work together to come out so that everybody our needs are taken care of, and I thank you for that.
Yes, and like I said, we're perfectly fine with working within the parameters of a 20% on the 1 cent sales tax versus a hard line $500,000 or whatever. We'll work within the parameters.
Thank you.
And I just need to know that we're gonna work the same way. I'm gonna get the information from Danielle, I'm gonna ask LaWanda and Marcia to make sure we're following within the county purchasing policy, and then they issue the PO, and then we make the order.
And I can
That's
go
all
with that for another year. I don't mind to, go a year at a time. And each year we're gonna have to reevaluate everything.
Yeah.
But I'm okay with that. And if you're okay, and if the board agrees to go with 20%, that's a good compromise.
We're fine, the sheriff will be fine with that.
Isn't that still the same number, 500,000?
It'll be close, yeah.
It is right now.
And what we're saying is though, is if you don't meet the budget if you don't meet the 1 cent sales tax projection, then we'll just have to work within the parameters of that.
Which
You're
we
not
don't
holding a
know.
hard line of
Which
500,000.
we don't know, we won't know until the end of the year.
And it could go over the 500,000, I mean, and if we don't need it, then obviously we're not gonna spend it.
Yeah,
The only thing is, again, 90% of our stuff goes to emergency vehicles, and that's the avenue in which our officers get to where they have to go to help people. So 10% of that goes to other type purchases, but when I say vehicles, I'm including that 90% of it goes to the purchase of the vehicle and the equipment that goes in the vehicle.
I'm okay with the process for the next year. And I'm also okay, if y'all are okay, and if the board agrees, 20%, then that actually would be probably less money than the 250 that we were talking about. But that's okay, it's a good compromise.
Okay. All right, if y'all need anything else from me, LaWanda, you got my number, y'all call me and I'll come back or whatever, but thank you, sir.
Thank you.
So what do y'all think about that? If we took 20, he said, he just said, we can get by, we'll be okay with 20%. So that's not cutting them out of anything they need for the healing.
20% of what?
The sales tax.
What's the number?
2.5 million.
The
Then we-
estimated revenue is 2.5, and so 20% of that is 500,000.
Is how much?
500,000.
That works out. And if it goes up, then everybody gets more. If it goes down, we're not obligated to meet our commitment out of the general fund.
So then, 500, we're back to 500, we're the same deal. I mean, 500 to the, and then, are we still at the stance of they bring a budget to us next year?
That's what you said he'd be working towards.
What's that?
He said they would be working towards that.
Put it in their budget next year, and then I guess if we're saying 10%, I think I heard 10% to allocate to the TCBA.
Yeah,
I'm not in support of
Is
that.
that what was said?
that's important to us. That's extremely important.
I think what we can ask the sheriff to do for next year is when he submits his budget, submit a capital, what his capital would be at the same time, and then you can make a decision about how you're gonna fund that capital, whether you're gonna use 1 cent or whether you're gonna use
That's exactly right.
general fund or whatever, but you'll have that number, and you can make a decision on how you're gonna fund that. As of right now, you're just giving them amount of money, and let them spend it, how they want to.
So, on the 250, and if we say it's gonna be earmarked for TCBA, then we've obviously got to see result before we go to just drawing that money out.
But they're not gonna have immediate results. You have to understand, that is a very difficult, competitive process, and if we don't fund that for them to try, we're gonna get absolutely nothing. We know that for sure.
Well, I know.
I got $300,000. If they spend $250,000 of that money, and they know they're running short and need something else, we're gonna work with them, and they might be gonna just slow them down.
But don't tell me why. Why do you not wanna dedicate it? Just tell me why you don't wanna dedicate
I
it.
do not want that money tied up in case the hospital and the sheriff's department needs it. I want us to have it in the general fund where we could do something with it in a hurry.
Could be operations. Could be a number of things.
I'm not saying for the hospital or the sheriff's department, I mean, allocated their money too, or we're gonna allocate their money.
Could be operations, could be a number of
But it
expenses.
could be something else, another need that we have.
Sure.
That's all I'm saying.
I just don't wanna dedicate it, you know, to where we can't get it back. I don't wanna, but, well, that'd give them $525,000, $425,000, they got it, we wouldn't wanna have to pull it back from them. I mean, you know,
That's what, $550,000.
yeah.
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 What that would be. So, and said, we're not saying, hey, they have $300,000 to work with for a year. We're not saying next year that they're not, hey, 10% of that money may go to them next year.
That's right, they might not spend that money.
We're not saying it's not, so. Are we?
You entertain a lot of people and fly a lot of places for $300,000. I mean, that's
You
just.
got salaries and things like that too, but
Yeah.
do what you wanna do.
So that, the other 250 or the other, I guess, the 10%, now we're talking on the percentage now, so the other 10% is going in reserve, is that what it is?
I would say that the county capital needs for the county.
We're going to reserve for capital.
Okay. All right, so what are we doing with next?
So I do have something new, and I apologize for, bringing this up at the last minute. It was just that I was not prepared when we prepared the budget, but I would like the board to consider funding recruitment services for our county, for our engineer position, our county, we have two different positions. So for our engineering position, I just have some bigger than a bread box figures. We have not received quotes, we haven't gotten that far into the process, I'm gonna just speak with you first. But our county engineer has announced that he will be retiring soon. I do not have a date. We have a lot of projects because we are fortunate enough to have received a large amount of grant funding, but that takes his time. We have been recruiting for an engineer for years and have not been successful. So I would like the boards to, consider putting money aside for recruiting services. That person would be able to go outside of the region and possibly help us with our search for an engineer.
One reason we have not been able to get an engineer because they don't make enough of money. Commissioner Newman was talking about, we're not getting these positions filled because the salary, that is one. Why Kenneth Dudley has stayed here with with the education and the knowledge and the experiences he's got from making nothing almost. That is one area where that salary has to be looked at. No wonder, even if you've got a recruiter, they're not gonna get an engineer to come in here and work for nothing. And that's a problem. So we need to look at that salary. If we had the salary at the right rate, we might have already filled that position. So, I don't wanna waste money trying to get somebody to come in here and work for, so they could go anywhere and make more money than they make here. An engineer makes good money. They don't work for less than 100,000. Nowhere, unless it's Kenneth Dudley. And the only reason he did it, because he was born and raised here and he loves being here. But believe me, nobody else is gonna work an engineer for that little bit of money, unless they don't have food on the table. As soon as they get some groceries, they'll leave.
Well, without somebody, or getting somebody looking, working on getting us engineer, we're gonna be, one day when he leaves, he could leave tomorrow. And where would we be? He's got a lot of projects started up there, somebody's got to get in there and follow up with it.
Raise that salary, get a recruiter, and get somebody in here.
Well, we need to get a recruiter working on it, and we need to raise the salary.
That's
Are
right.
we not getting any, do we have the salary posted along with the job? We do.
We do.
So that could be, I got you.
That could be, but what I would say is that it is within the board's discretion. If we had a candidate to present to the board, if the candidate wanted outside of that midpoint salary range, the board could approve that. That's That's
But a
something.
lot of them, like you said, they don't even apply. Remember, you just said
I
that in the
did.
first of this
I
meeting.
did.
They don't even apply because they look at that salary range. So now, you're saying we've got discretion, so that's kind of like
Well,
talking
that's-
out of both sides of your mouth, and not being disrespectful, I'm just making a point. We can't have it one, you can't say, well, we don't get anybody that even come here and look at the job because of the salary, and then you say, well, if they wanna come, we can adjust the salary. We gotta make it attractive so they want to come, and then you gotta hire somebody to find them.
What's the cost for the recruitment services?
So the total cost, from what I could tell, and this is, I haven't done formal quotes, but if you wanted to set funding aside, I would set aside $30,000 to cover the services and travel contingencies, things like that. If that's what you wish to do.
I'm okay with that, but I just think we've gotta look at that salary. You're not gonna get a good person, an engineer, to come in here for that little bit of salary.
What, could you check around with other counties and see what they're paying their engineers? And let's get into the same scale that other counties in the surrounding area is paying theirs, and we might get a better chance to get one,
A lot of money to recruit one person. If I could get 4 or 5 counties, hire me to do that, I'm in.
Say that again?
I said, that's
He
a
wants
lot
the
of
job.
money that's a lot of money for someone to hire one person. If I could get 4 or 5 counties to buy off into that, I'm in.
It takes money to make money.
And I will say that I did have a discussion with one recruiter, and they said that this is someone out of Tallahassee, and she told me they don't even accept, requests from outside entities for engineers, because then that is a smaller pool for local government. It is very difficult to find engineers now, and it's not just here, it's all over the country. It's difficult to find an engineer.
Did you tell her what we pay?
No, I did not.
She may change her mind when she sees how little we
Well,
pay.
part of the issue is it's not necessarily an issue, but what we've been advertising is the engineer, and that salary is substantially lower than the county engineer position. So, but we haven't advertised for the county engineer position because I don't have a date certain of when Mr. Dudley will be retiring. So, there would be potentially a possibility for that person to move into his shoes once he does retire, but that's an unknown at this time.
It is, but Kenneth is backed up. And we
Yeah,
use
absolutely.
outside sources because Kenneth doesn't have time. So, and we've been advertising for an additional engineer. So if we could land one in addition to Kenneth, that would help us. That's why we're delayed on so many
Yes.
projects, is because Kenneth,
Huge.
he only has so many hours a day.
Right, well, and he gets involved in so many
That's
other
right.
things. He doesn't just work on projects. And so when we pull him from one thing to the other, and a perfect example is this opportunity for the HMGP funding, which is millions and millions and millions of dollars. Well, he was an integral part of that application process, because that's information that is not readily available to anybody but him. And so in order to try to be successful for those applications, he had to help us. Well, that puts the projects that he was working on the back burner. It's not anything intentional or malicious, it's just the way it works sometimes, because he is so knowledgeable. And, he's just such a big part of county operations. So, yes, it would help if we could find an engineer to work with them.
And when I first came here, we had 2 engineers and sometimes used an outside source.
We did.
And then when we lost that one, just put a load on Kenneth, like you say, and now if Kenneth leaves before we find somebody, then we're gonna be forced to use outside services, which is gonna cost a fortune, because they don't work free.
They do not, and I believe, now, I'm just shooting off the hip, so please don't hold me to this, but I wanna say that when I was talking to one of the firms, it could be $1,000 a day. It was very expensive. And now we do have engineering firms under contract, but those are only for road projects, that we cannot use or I would have already asked them to help us with some other projects. But that's limited to road projects, so I can't utilize those firms for other design projects or anything else that we have that's waiting for Kenneth to finish.
Right now is a good time to get one with all these people from across the country moving to Florida. Now's the time to be advertising and get us a good engineer. That's right now the time.
So it's up to the board. If you would like to pursue that, we can certainly ask for quotes for these services, and I can bring I can bring a proposal back to the board and we can start that process. But I just know the funding is not, I did not include the funding for next year because I just didn't have all the information at the time.
So would we be saying, what is the salary range?
For the engineer,
Yeah, what is it?
sorry, you're back on that.
69 to,
That's pitiful.
that's the left side, I think, all right. That's what I want.
So are we gonna say that this is our salary range, but let them know that it's negotiable? Because I don't think you're gonna have many takes at that.
So an engineer one is 61,505, is that the right one? Yeah, to 89,191.
Is that the spot, is that the position we're looking to fill?
The 350 engineer one, yes.
So what is the difference in 350 and 380?
So 380 is a little bit higher. It's just about, so if you look at entry, the minimum, it would be a difference, and these are off a little bit, but it would be a difference of $7,000 or $8,000 a year, it looks like, if you look at the minimum. Now, according to our policy manual, I can authorize up to midpoint of the salary range, which would be for the engineer one, 75,360, which isn't, I mean, I'm sure it's less than the private sector. But then anything over the midpoint, the board would, so say if we do the 50, if y'all authorize 50 cents an hour, that would be around $74,000 a year would be midpoint. And then anything over that, I would have to bring to the board for approval.
I would think you might not get entertainment from it for less than $90,000.
That's a very low, I'd say at least 100. And I don't think that many people would look at it for 100. I may be wrong, but I just know how much they make.
And you can authorize that, if that's what you wish to do. If you had a candidate that you wish to consider for over, for outside of that, that's at your
You can
discretion.
discuss that flexibility with the recruiter, and if they are successful with a candidate, then the board could approve the final wage rate.
Yes.
Yes.
Salary.
Let me ask a question then. Are we looking for civil, mechanical, engineer? Or what kind of engineer we looking at?
Simple, wouldn't it?
It's civil.
No, it's not, and it's very specific. And the only reason I know this is because I worked in HR before I did this position. A regular civil engineer will not have a specialty for the roads. So there are certain specialties that when we pull in those applications and resumes that he's looking at, to make sure that that person has the, the qualifications for the road construction, which is most of what we have here.
They're PEs, they're engineers with the
They
PE,
are
which that's a higher
Yeah.
PE means it is.
professional
Yeah.
engineer.
Professional.
Yes,
That's what
professional
Kenneth is.
regulation. Okay.
Right, but what we ask for is experience in road construction. I just need to know if you want to include it in next year's budget.
Yes. Yeah.
We can?
We have both salaries budgeted, just so you know, and we have had them. So, so obviously what we do not, if I need to, if we're successful in bringing an agreement to the board, we have some funding this year we could utilize because we do not have that second position filled.
Okay. All right.
for just a second, though, when Kenneth leaves, and if we are lucky enough to get one engineer right away, then when Kenneth leaves, we really should continue to try to get that second one, if we can.
Yes.
And then, you know, Kenneth has been here a long, long time. Somebody moving in from out of town, they may or may not stay for a long time. I know the average time for most of them on a job is about 2 years. They don't, most of them don't stay long, they move on because of the opportunities there.
All right. So, anything in particular next that we?
So all we have left is the capital request, and y'all
Right.
come back Thursday for
I
that?
guess we'll go back Thursday for that. But,
So, I mean, just to be clear, what are we gonna talk about on Thursday?
it's this capital improvement plan,
Are you gonna be deciding what
what do we,
are we deciding what to fund out of, or what not to fund out of?
is any of this budgeted now?
It's all
Yeah, it's all
included.
budgeted for next year.
So it's
So
all,
that is in the budget we're talking about. The 5-year plan has stuff that's not included, right?
This
That's
is-
not that.
in the budget, I mean, we're just looking to see if we're gonna pull anything out of it. I mean, do we even see ourselves pulling anything out of it right now? I mean,
I didn't see anything that seemed unnecessary when I saw the prioritizations, but I didn't see anything that seemed excessive.
And I would think you could always make that decision if there was something you decided on a project you decided not to do.
yeah.
You can make that decision at any time.
You could reduce that,
Right, I mean, that's,
so it can be approved, but contingent on necessary reductions as they come up.
I want people to want.
Well, okay, so do you want, if you want to leave it all in the budget, then could I maybe bring a 5-year CIP to the board at the next workshop, the next regular workshop?
Sure.
Or do you wanna, or wait till a regular meeting?
Doesn't matter to me.
I mean,
I think it's sufficient.
workshop will be, okay, I guess.
I don't have anything to do Thursday, so I can be here if need be.
So the only thing is that Tuesday at 6 o'clock, we're advertising a special meeting to approve the tentative millage rate, so.
That's tomorrow?
No, that's
Tuesday, next week.
Thursday.
Third.
So that's all that's on the agenda right now is for you to approve that, so that won't be able to change. And you know, I mean, we're gonna advertise it the same as this year, it's been there talk about increasing. So it would be, you would adopt that rate, on the 30th, you will not be able to increase that at that point. You know, you can always go down, but you can't go up at that point, on the millage rate.
On the military?
Right.
I don't know.
And so if you wanted to discuss it at that workshop afterwards, you're probably not gonna change the mill rate anyway, so, you can always talk about it then if you want to.
I mean, that's whatever, I mean, it's Thursday or the workshop, whatever. What's the will?
I said workshop, but I've seen these ratings, and rankings, I don't see anything that seems excessive.
So,
The discussion is if there's a need for Thursday's workshop or to move it to a regular board workshop.
I'm fine with it, if y'all, what did y'all come up with?
So it's to approve the capital expenses that are presented as they are. And if there's a need to reduce those, we can reduce that at a later time, but it will be approved currently.
you okay to do it at a workshop, one of our regular workshops, or Thursday?
Be fine, Thursday be fine if y'all wanna do it.
Okay.
Y'all wanna do it Thursday? I mean, what's the?
I think a regular workshop's fine with me.
I mean, I think a workshop's fine, it's all in the budget already, that if we needed, we could always make a change at one of our regular workshops if we needed to.
Okay.
At our next workshop to go over. What do you think? I know
Doesn't
what
matter
you.
to me.
Me either. Now, I don't work, but this is my job.
Got mine too, so I can be here.
So you tell me when to be here and I'll be here.
Yeah, I mean, I can be here Thursday, but I mean, it's.
Yeah, but if it's not pressing, and you said the 30th is when we set the millage, we can come under but not go over.
Right.
That's what we do.
So,
Regular workshop.
okay.
But we'll bring a proposed 5-year CIP,
But
to the board. And that way, if you.
And that's
want
on
to
the
move-
30th, all right?
Yes.
That's the
If
same
what you-
CIP we've been seeing at each of these workshops. Didn't we just receive one of those?
No, this would be the 5-year.
The 5-year.
Yes.
We recently got that updated spreadsheet.
I don't think so. Did-
I believe so. It had indication to program road funding and such.
Well, he may be talking about the master project list.
Yeah.
But we did start it for Melanie's grants that she has had, but I don't remember finishing it.
Yeah. We'll bring it to we'll bring
Workshop.
the
Schedule
up-to-date
workshop.
5-year that would start the next fiscal year to the next workshop,
The regular board workshop.
if that's what y'all wanna do.
That'll work, okay.
I'm here every day.
On the 5-year though, is the first year,
Yes,
this is included.
this would be the
Everything
first
on
year.
the first year of the capital improvement is on this list.
Yes, ma'am.
So then it would be starting at year 2 going forward.
No, it would be starting at year 1. So what we'll bring is the 5-year capital improvement plan that starts next fiscal year, which is what you're.
Which is what is on this.
Yeah, that would be year 1.
So as you would think it would work, that each year you would allocate funding for whatever's requested each year as long as we've got money.
That's the way we've been doing it, yes.
Okay, we got to meet tomorrow night,
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
All right. Meeting's adjourned.
Yeah, I think I'm going to donut face.
Line muted.
We don't need to bring it tomorrow night.
You all right back there?
Yeah, how you?
I'm good. Good to see you.
I think I can take a cup of coffee.
Want something to go?
He's always up for something to go.
Have a good day.
Videos going as possible with you.
I'll let you some of this.
Did you?
Y'all have a good day.
You too.
Another cup of coffee. You know how it was, didn't you? Yeah.
Yeah, because I can't think of it off the top of my head.
It was live. I sometimes keep it on book, but sometimes I can't get it to play live on my iPad at home. It's weird. And I'm on
Anything crazy on the board? I'm not